I hope that didn't mess up. I accidentally double tapped the button that says stream, so I'm just going to make sure the stream is actually streaming. We're doing it. 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 We did it. We did it. You want to come up, buddy? Let's get you up here. Say hello to the world. Hello. Good little pugger. Who's a good little pugger? Is it you? Are you a good little pugger? Welcome to our show, starring a tiny dog. Oh, I know. You hate it when I do this. I know you hate it when I do this. You hate it when I do this, I know. And down you go again. Whoop, 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 whoop. You okay? You okay? Good boy. Good boy. Okay. We did it. Oh. Lots of really cool articles today, actually. Lots of cool stuff. Like there's I think people are getting pretty fed up with the Trudeau administration. Lots of skepticism. I'm seeing lots of skepticism. A good deal of skepticism that is coming from the right is just the half-baked neoliberal garbage. Hey, Major, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Real shame about Cody Johnston. Major and I were just talking on Discord about Cody Johnston. Some more news. Finally released a video about the Ukrainian war. Right? He took a while to release a video, which I knew he was going to because that's just the nature of his show. I rather like Cody Johnston and Some More News, and I still recommend them. But I'm very disappointed with his take on the Ukrainian war, right? Like, does not mention the coup in 2014, just doesn't mention it, right? Treats the war in the Donbass as if it's the Russian separatists, right? So, like, no critical eye about that. And then addresses the Azov battalion, but extremely downplays it. Like, really downplays the neo-Nazis that we're funding. And like, I think that's shameful behavior, right? I think that's shameful behavior. I don't think you can genuinely have a conversation about this. Like, if you ignore the 2014 coup and ignore the Donbass war and pretend like it's completely fine that there is a Nazi battalion in the military, then you can make any claim you like about the conflict, you know? So it's extremely disappointing, and pretty safely puts Cody in the same category that I put Jon Stewart, which is that Jon Stewart's critique, like, Jon Stewart's a liberal, right? His critiques domestically of his own culture are fairly accurate and can be, and many times, very sharp. But foreign policy is always pro-imperialist, or at least imperialist apologencia, right? Just like, yeah, whatever, so we do war, okay, like, that's completely fine. Oh, their war is a real problem, though. Or just straight up, like in the case of Jon Stewart, like Jon Stewart completely goes along with the Juan Guaido bullshit, like the idea that Maduro is a dictator, like that kind of absolute asinine nonsense. That Stewart knows it can't possibly be the case, right? Like he has a writing staff. Like, there are people around him who can pretty safely say, like, yeah, the UN, like, Maduro is the, like, he wins elections. Like, I don't know what you need here. Like, we sent Abby Martin down there. Like, she looked at them. She interviewed people, right? Like, you can do journalism. And then ultimately, people like Jon Stewart, their solutions, and a big reason why someone like Jon Stewart always gets traction is because his solutions are always just vote harder, right? Just vote harder, and just write your representative more, right? Just reinvest in the system that's failing you more, right? Like, Albert Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Well, in the case of our civilization, the doing the same thing is continue investing in a system that's obviously abandoning you. And today, as we go through the articles, we're going to see that lots and lots and lots of people are actually starting to write about this abandonment. They're starting to put two and two together that, oh, wait, these liberals are faking. Like, these liberals are pretending. I think the most clearly voiced one actually comes from, of all people, Tom Mulcair, who writes, oh, come on, I'm the best in the world. I'm the best in the world. Come on now. Where did I put that? Where did I put it? Oh no, did I accidentally close it? I hope not. I really wanted to read that article. That's a shame. Oh no. Oh, there you go. Found it. I'm the best. I'm going to put that right up here. Tom Mulcair, Trudeau's phony war against climate change. Now, I don't agree with everything that Tom Mulcair says, right? Like, I actually think that Mulcair himself is a neoliberal, that his perception of economics and his perception of his society is entrenched in neoliberal values. He's very much, like, he ran on an austerity platform, right, which gets beat by Trudeau's fake bullshit platform. But his critique here against Trudeau, I think, is fairly accurate. So I'm gonna go through this because I think that this is actually, like, it's good to see that there are other people who are established people within the political system actually saying out loud what is true and obvious to everybody. Justin Trudeau didn't get the majority he thought he was entitled to last September, so he went and bought one with taxpayers' money. We'll be receiving the first part of the invoice with Thursday's budget. His deal with the NDP will bring in lots of new social programs, which are the best way to reduce inequalities in our society. They're also hard to dismantle when a new government comes along. A win for the NDP's base, but in the eyes of most Canadians, it's Trudeau who will get the credit. Chrystia Freeland will have to show that there is at least some inkling of a plan to reduce the record deficits we rang up during the pandemic. Will she take the risk of opening up on the revenue side, as rumored, by whittling away some of the capital gain exemptions on the sale of primary residences? She and Trudeau have already said they'll increase taxes for financial institutions. What other moves will there be? One thing is certain. After the presentation of Stephen Guilbeault's detailed plan, there will be lots of money for the promised fight against climate change. Billions. Monday's shocking UN report by the IPCC is an alarm bell for future generations. When UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called that report a litany of broken climate promises and declared the yawning gap between climate pledges and reality, Canada's own behavior was one of the targets. Despite that shot across our collective bow, Canada will continue to subsidize oil and gas companies and approve new destructive fossil fuel projects. Guilbeault is deeply experienced with a really pragmatic streak that distinguishes him from many of his former colleagues in the environmental movement. He has navigated well in his new position, letting the bureaucrats know he's the boss. His plan, like him, is intelligent and ambitious. I knew him well during the 3 years that I was Quebec's environment minister. You could talk with the guy. He knew when someone was making an honest effort and when he was being fed a line. We got along well. I was one of the skeptics when he threw in his lot with Trudeau. I attended his nomination meeting and was surprised by the stark partisan tone he struck in defending the Liberals' record on climate. They had bought a pipeline. How could Guilbeault back that? His answer was strong, if not quite convincing. Trans Mountain was a fait accompli. No sense crying over spilt milk. He asked to be judged on his own results. Well, he's about to get what he asked for. The information dribbling out of Liberal quarters in Newfoundland and Labrador points to rapid approval of the major offshore oil project known by the bilingual name of Bay du Nord. The hush-hush sequence was adopt a big climate plan to provide cover. Talk a lot about climate in the budget to provide even more cover. Approve this massive new fossil fuel project. Simple as 1, 2, 3. The Liberals have prepared a Rolodex of rationalizations. It's far less intensive in terms of GHG production per barrel than the oil sands. True, but it'll be an addition to the oil sands, not in the place of. Inevitably, the oil will also get burned somewhere, increasing global warming. Under the Constitution, provinces have jurisdiction over natural resources. True again, but the offshore project has to go to the federal cabinet for approval. Without Trudeau and Guilbeault's blessing, it can't proceed. Canadian oil doesn't have the stigma of Russian oil. Also true, but it does have the same GHGs. Newfoundland, as part of the sales job, may be persuaded to agree they won't be making any new request for approvals. But how can one government bind the hands of any future House of Assembly? Trudeau broke a key election promise with the new Liberal climate plan. During the election campaign, he was hit hard by Jagmeet Singh for having the worst record in the G7 under the Paris Accord. To help get out of the bind, Trudeau swore there'd be a hard cap, an absolute limit, on GHG production in the oil and gas sector. That has proven false. And Guilbeault is stuck, saying we'll get to it sometime in the future. Now the other shoe is about to drop with the approval of Bay du Nord. Last Friday, Stephen Guilbeault was greeted by young people screaming at him about Bay du Nord. When he became Environment Minister, I joked with him that he'd better get prepared for the day when environmentalists would protest him. He chuckled because he knew it was inevitable. What's not inevitable is approving a project that can only worsen climate change. In my current role as chairman of the board of Earth Day Canada, I have a front row seat to view the serious engagement of many Canadians, municipalities, businesses, and NGOs in the fight against climate change. I also know that the federal government can be an incredible catalyst and partner. Guilbeault has begun to show that. What's been sorely lacking for decades is any serious action by the Canadian government. To our eternal shame, we were the first country in the world to withdraw from the Kyoto Protocol. That was on Stephen Harper's watch, but Liberals can find no solace in swinging blame towards the Conservatives. As former Chrétien Chief of Staff Eddie Goldenberg frankly admitted, in explaining Liberal failure to meet our international obligations, they had signed Kyoto without a plan. It was, he said, more about galvanizing public opinion. A high-sounding way of admitting that it was an exercise in political communication, nothing more. To interject for myself, a lie. A bullshit lie. Many Canadians just believe without evidence that the Liberals must be doing something right on climate. Over-the-top attacks by Conservatives actually help them in this regard. The Liberals have consistently taken full political advantage of that credulity. Trudeau has always understood that Canadians need to be told we're taking real action, even when we're in last place. It helps him get elected. Like the Wizard of Oz, he tries to maintain the illusion and pleads with Canadians to pay no attention to the offshore oil rig behind the curtain. We somehow feel better with Justin Trudeau's failure on climate than with Stephen Harper's. I was in the room in Paris in 2015 when Justin Trudeau flung out his arms and proclaimed that Canada is back. He waited to get back to Canada to say more discreetly that he was back with Stephen Harper's plans, timelines, and targets. Trudeau never even met those. Trudeau was able to go to last fall's climate summit in Glasgow thanks to the presence of Guilbeault, who has lots of credibility on the world stage. Trudeau had the temerity to tell other countries that they should do more like Canada. Don't expect him to strut his stuff at the next one. He will. In the days following the budget, there will be a moment of truth for Guilbeault. Will he go along with his Prime Minister and approve Bay du Nord, or will he take the type of principled stance he's taken in the past? You can't claim to be fighting climate change and at the same time approve an increase of oil production of hundreds of millions of barrels. Will Trudeau once again show that for him it's all about appearances and that actual results don't matter? Despite the real danger and all of our promises, will Canada continue to be among the highest per capita emitters on the planet? Younger Canadians will be counting on Trudeau and Guilbeault to do the right thing and refuse to increase Canada's fossil fuel production. Their future quality of life depends on it, but nothing could be less certain given the Liberal track record of just faking it. Pretty strong words. Pretty strong words from Tom Mulcair here. And I feel gives me a lot more credibility, frankly. What have I been saying this whole time? What have I said over and 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 over again? Right? Like, it's just how it is. How you guys all doing today? Watson, grinning. Good to see you, Vince. Seen the latest rumblings from the Fed about the bigger interest rates to hit wage growth? I mean, interest rates hikes are just going to, like, what the interest rate hikes are going to do is it's just going to destroy the middle and lower class. Like, it's basically just saying to the lower and middle class, you will no longer be able to get access to the money supply in a meaningful way. It'll bankrupt about 20% of the society, right? The poorer side of the society. And the wealthy don't care because they have the money, right? Like, that's it. So for them, they'll just hang on to the money. They've already done the share buybacks. They've already solidified everything, right? So raising the interest rate now, all it's going to do is increase the suffering and the poverty in the society in major and meaningful ways. The rich, like, it'll matter to them insofar as they won't be able to just, like, get free money, right? They won't be able to just walk into a bank and be like, hey, can I have $1 million? And the bank goes, here you go. And then, you know, at some point they turn around and give the $1 million back. But like that arrangement's not going to be the case any longer. So it's like the most mild of hardships for the wealthy. But what it's really going to do is bankrupt about 20% of the society, right? Like, people just won't be able to pay it back. So, which, I mean, that's the goal, right? The goal is to maintain the death cult and sacrifice literally everything you can. If you want the world to go green, you have to figure out how to make capitalists a lot of money. Of course, yeah, you can't just seize the means of production and actually do stuff. They won't fund the project without a positive ROI. That's all they care about. Inflation is a hidden tax on wage growth. It's how workers in the U.S. haven't seen a wage increase yet. Oh no, in Newfoundland. And the NDP will follow in line. The Liberal Democratic government is not good. We need another election, please. Well, and we've got the data is in. That's not it. The data is in 60% of the society is in favor of it, right? And I kind of feel like it's more of a realist sort of position than anything, right? That, like, what's the alternative? Another election, right? So people don't want it. So more people are in favor of it than they're against it. So I think people are living in a dream world, right? They hope that this will somehow result in something beneficial when all you're really going to get is just a song and dance, right? Just a little song and dance. Meanwhile, right, the pandemic profiteers, grocery cartel profits, right? So your Metro and Sobeys and Loblaws, year by year. Yep, the NDP caucus should revolt, but they're silent and compliant as always. Well, because what's happened, and more, I'm starting to see that it's the case. Like, take a look at footage from NDP rallies, right? And what do you see, right? Like, let's be honest. Like, what do you see is a sea of minority groups, right? So the objective of the Conservative and Liberal Party has been to make the only type of politics that you actually do be about identity politics. And that's what has manifested in our political system. The Conservative Party is white, right? The NDP is minority groups. And the Liberals are like this amalgamation. They're like Team Diversity Squad, right? And that's the goal. So when the population is divided along these lines, it makes it very difficult to have meaningful class-based conversations. Right? There is no party that's interested in class politics anymore. That it is just all identity politics. And so when the NDP or the Liberals stand up and say, we're going to do something in a class-based kind of a way, their parties are silent because that's not what they're structured to do. They're not structured to have those conversations. They're literally illiterate. They just assume that the leadership knows what they're doing because they're talking about a subject that they don't know anything about. Right? What pseudo-left SocDem would ever revolt over this? Yeah, that's not how social democracy works. Social democracy is a concession. It's not something you vote for. EU Parliament to Trudeau, you are a complete disgrace and embarrassment to Canada. Spare us your presence. Yeah. Like, and we're so deluded about this, by the way. Like, I'm having people tell me that, like, no, Canada, people love us. Like, literally, the EU Parliament says to Trudeau, you're a complete disgrace and embarrassment to Canada. Like, get out of here. And we're like, oh yeah, everybody loves us. Like, we're the laggard. We're the one holding everything back. And it's because we're basically the asshole for the Americans, right? Like, we're just destroying our land and destroying everything to pull oil out of it and spew shit all over the place. Yeah, they should just make Freeland PM move on. Hey, Famita, how you doing? Good to see you. We need a real left-wing opposition party, not a lib, yeah. Good luck on that. I know, looks sunny through the window. Spring has sprung. Oh, tell me about it, bud. Tell me about it. It's 10 degrees right now, right? It's absolutely lovely. I'm so looking forward to, like, I got to get out to the beach. I gotta go down and actually get down there. Spend some time, but I'm reading audiobooks like mad. I basically wake up, read, do this, do my walkabout, get that video uploaded, do this channel, read some more, go to sleep, wake up, do it again. Right? Get a little bit of relaxation in there, you know. I gotta do some research, right? Get the links and everything. So over and over and over again, and one day I hope all of that will pay my bills. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, tell people I exist, give me a buck, all the things. You guys know all the things. I'm so looking forward to the day where I don't need to say that shit. I'm so looking forward to it, you guys. I hope that you're here for it, and when it happens, I'm gonna be like, amazing. I'm gonna have a little celebration about it. You know who I haven't seen in a long time is Mocked, actually. I wonder what happened. I hope he's doing well. Yep, 2015, Liberals going from 34 seats to 180. What a disaster. I mean, that's classic Machiavellian politics. When the populace has to choose between a ruler whose name they don't recognize and a ruler whose name they do recognize, they'll go for the ruler whose name they recognize. Right? That's straight Machiavelli 101, and it's exactly what happened. It was just like literally, oh, his name is Trudeau. And that's it. Like that's literally it. I wish people would just vote CPC and GTA to reduce Lib majority so the NDP can revolt and get a new leader. This sort of accelerationism is not a good idea. Just letting you guys know my job starts in a month's time. I won't be able to be part of the stream anymore. I will surely miss this. I'm sorry to hear that, Eric. Hopefully things are going to go well in your life, though, and you can pop in from time to time, I suppose. But you're always welcome here, Eric, bud. I really value your presence here and your participation. Let people know I exist. Let your new coworkers know I exist. Spread it around, bud. And good luck on that, bud. Good luck on that. It might be hyperbole, but if Canada cuts off the flow of oil, the U.S. will invade. It's literally existential for the Canucks. I mean, there is a degree of that. I don't think the U.S. will ever actually literally invade Canada. Like, the enormity of that international scandal would be like... I can't even begin to articulate how bad an idea that would be for the Americans on the world stage, right? Tom Mulcair, where were you when you were NDP leader? I know, right? Hey, Lonnie, how you doing? The capitalists use identity politics as a means of appearing progressive when they continue the destruction of our planet. Yep. NDP and Liberals are just NDP politics parties. No class politics whatsoever. Exactly. 10, it's like 6 here on the other side of Lake Ontario. Yeah, it's happening. Accelerate to doom. With the cars, no less. They're only focused on neo-pronouns and Quebec sovereignty, nothing about class politics and ownership. Yeah, because you can't even point out, like, this is how bad it is, guys. Like, you can't even point out in meaningful ways that there are people who own the society and there are people who work for them, right? Like, that fact alone it's not part of the conversation, right? That what the Liberals and the NDP say is we're all in this together, right? No, we're not. Some people own the society and other people work for those people. That's the arrangement. And if your party won't even talk about it, then you can't possibly find solutions, right? You can't possibly find solutions. All parties engage in class politics, just pro-bourgeoisie class-based politics. The identity culture war stuff is just a distraction. Yeah. No, I mean, of course they engage in politics, but they don't, in class politics, but they don't frame it that way, right? That the framing of the class politics that exists in liberal and NDP parties and bourgeoisie parties is that what's good for the capitalists, i.e. the owners, is good for everyone. That the benefit, like this is neoliberalism, right? The benefits given to the capitalist class, the ownership class, will trickle down into the populace, right? That's how it works. Oh, we got a new one in chat. Jin Ho Choi. Good day from Sydney, down under, comrade. Good to see you, bud. Glad you're here. Hope you're here to contribute meaningfully. We're trying to, I don't know, have a solidarity movement, actually foment some kind of ridiculous fight back. Good opportunity for me to say that if you are in Toronto, I'm going to put this in the chat just so that we have it. And I got to remember to actually, there it is, mention this every day. We got 2 events coming up. If you're in Toronto, it would be wonderful if you actually came, right? April 20th. 931 Yonge Street, 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then April 28th, Yonge and Dundas, 2:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. We are shutting the street down in protest for the treatment of disabled people. The rent is too damn high. We're literally saying to disabled people, we give less money to the disabled here in Canada than they do in the United States. Yeah, so we got to protest about it. They are the canary in the coal mine, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah, current job very least pays the bills. I work half the year, off half the year. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I lost all hope for Jugmeat months ago when he abandoned the working class 3 CRB, for sure. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Like that to me was extremely telling. Okay, guys, let's take a moment. Let's do today's number. Jin-Ho, for you that don't know, pick a number between 1 and 10. We're drawing a ball by the great and powerful David Lynch.
For today's number, it's 6.
I'm going with a 6.
2022.
I'm going with a 6.
10 balls.
Ligandies with a 6. Look at that. We're in it together, bud. Here we go. 2 8s. We got a 5.
1 through 10.
A big 8.
Swirl the number.
3 8s in the chat. It's going to be an 8. It's going to be an 8. 3 8s in the chat. That's a good indication. Here we go.
Number.
Here we go. Here we go.
Today's number is
8.
3.
That's like half of an 8, right? That's like half an 8. DM in late with the 3. We'll count it. We'll count it. We'll say you did it, DM. Ding, 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 ding. There's a lag on the chat. There's a lag on the chat, so I'll accept it. I'll accept it. Go do the thing. Do the thing that you want to do, bud. Go eat it, Lynch. Go chase the rainbow. Ask the girl out. Slap your boss. Right? Go up like Will Smith on Chris Rock and just be like, oh, right? Don't do that. We here at the Canadian Colony do not espouse violence. Except in self-defense, obviously. So, Ontario reports 38% increase in COVID-19 hospitalizations in last 7 days. One thing that's been happening across Canada is that most medical institutions are no longer actually keeping track of how many cases there actually are, because what has happened is that there's been enough distribution of rapid response tests. I've got a rapid response test myself. Branwyn, I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh, that's tough. I hope you don't have it bad, man. I have a good friend who got COVID, and she got really lucky. It was just like a bad flu for her. Get well soon. Yes, of course, Branwyn. Oh, my goodness. And the thing that's scary about COVID is that it seems like it's just like a random chance. Like, no one knows what's going to happen, right? So all we've got now is hospitalizations because of the spread of rapid tests. Now everyone's got these, and so if you test positive, you just sequester, right? Yeah, it's as if people agreed not to wear masks and get infected. Incredible. I know, Jin-Ho. Holy shit, right? Holy shit. Yeah, like the timing of it is pretty, like we dropped mask mandates. there's a rise in infections, in hospitalizations. Like, doesn't take a genius to figure out, if you put your hand on a fire, you're going to get burned, right? Pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. My general feeling about what's happening here is that the Ford government really wants to downplay this, really doesn't want people to be talking about it as we go into an election. And honestly, like, if I had to be like real straightforward about it, the populace wants to move on. That's really what's happening. That, like, it's very tempting for us to shake our fist at Doug Ford and be like, "Oh, Ford." But the truth is that everybody is exhausted with this. No one wants to do it anymore. Like, the mask is still fairly ubiquitous. Most people are still wearing masks in public because I think it just makes good sense, and it's not a big hardship, right? It's not a big problem, especially if you're on the TTC and all that, right? Makes total sense. I think the funniest things that I've been seeing about this are that, like, the anti-mask types. Like, there are videos going throughout the internet where the anti-mask types are walking around being like, "Why are people still wearing masks? We're free now. Take them out. The mask mandate dropped. What do you say? All these sheeple with wearing their mask." And, like, they don't get that, like, we're sitting here being like, "No, bro, like, yeah, we're free. Yeah, we're free, and so we choose to wear the mask freely because we see that there's a benefit to it." Right? Like, you're putting this together, right? You're putting this together, right? It's so funny watching these anti-mask types because they legit thought that the only reason people were wearing masks is to comply with government regulation. That no one in the society was going like, "Oh, wearing a mask is actually good for our health. It's a smart idea for our health." And then once the mask mandate drops, it's like they all expected us to be like, "Yeehaw!" and like throw all of the masks into the air. Like it was a graduation is what they thought was going to happen. We were all going to go, "Yeah!" And there was going to be like a freeze frame, masks hanging in the air kind of moment, right? And the reality is that the mask mandate dropped and most people just said, "This is fine. You guys are coming in super late. Nova Scotia Communist, at Harry K, you guys are late. It was a 3. It was a 3, you guys. So, but wrong, late and wrong. How dare both of you, gentlemen? I'm just messing around. You know what? This is 3 plus 3 is 6, and then 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 9. So, in a way, Ken, that's really late, bro. Like, that's really, really late, bro. I can't give you the win there, Ken. I can't do it. Not in good conscience. Not if I want to uphold the legacy of David Lynch in my heart. I can't do it. I can't do it. Right, what are you guys chatting about? What are you guys doing? Yeah, what a shocker. The rule. Yeah, it's as if people agreed not to wear masks and get affected. Incredible. Yeah. What a shocker. The ruling class culture of malign neglect vis-a-vis COVID-19 is right out in the open. Yeah. Yeah, this is how they're treating climate change. It's how they're treating everything, right? The only reason they're talking about it is because we're talking about it. And if we weren't talking about it, they would be ignoring it. They don't care. Yeah, Ford won't allow lockdowns. Yeah, and I don't know enough about the success of lockdowns, and I've seen, like, the idea of lockdowns has been a touch contentious. How effective have they been? I haven't seen, and I'm willing to be convinced, honestly. Like, that's my position on the lockdown narrative. Like, if somebody were to show me something very serious from, like, let's say the World Health Organization or the UN saying, like, lockdowns were completely ineffective, they didn't work whatsoever, I would be like, "Oh, okay, like, that's quite serious." Like, to me, the lockdown thing is kind of jury's out. I forget the institution. There's a fairly credible institution that came out and said that the lockdowns weren't effective, that they didn't really help. So, yeah. But then again, it could be like the climate change thing, right? Where it's like, "Oh, science is out, everybody." Yeah, even though our scientists are saying that climate change is real. can we do a bit of USSR history? Recently, I came across a lot of people saying that the USSR has occupied East Europe for 40 years, and then after the USSR, they were able to flourish and prosper. Ooh, flourish and prosper, eh? Big. That's a big no, bro. Like the former Soviet states, and this is very basic. Like, this is very basic stuff. The only people who are saying that the Eastern Bloc of Europe post USSR have flourished are very delusional people. I mean, the case in point is Ukraine itself, right? Like, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine's economy has never recovered to the same level, right? They have had a decline in their productivity, in their organization, in their economy generally. They've never come up to the same level. So this idea that they're flourishing, like, absolutely not. And it's especially obvious when you compare it to Belarus, right? Belarus basically rejected the neoliberal idea that was coming through. They maintained most of the Soviet era policies, and they've done very well. They're a stable, I mean, very well, but they're a stable economy. I mean, for God's sake, you think about like Poland, Slovakia, Hungary. Like, I've got an article here. Hungary's about to get really ramrodded, man. Not only are they voting in Nazis, 6% of the public voted for Nazis, but EU triggers mechanism to strip Hungary of billions worth of budget funds, right? So like Hungary, this idea, the only thing that's really managed to staunch the major suffering in this area is the EU, right? And that they've been able to create like a federated body. But now you can see that the EU itself is starting to reject some of its own members, right? Like, they're looking at places like Hungary, they're looking at these kind of places and being like, you know what, we don't need to worry about actually funding you. We don't need to worry about actually, like, we can cut you off, right? We can throw, and think about like Romania, Bulgaria, for like are you kidding me? Czechoslovakia, right? Do we not remember like the 1990 bombing of like Yugoslavia? Do we not remember any of this? Like, people just want to exist in a fairy tale land where all of the problems were communism. But like, you just need to take a look at the data that happened in Ukraine itself to know what the case is. And then you take a look at polling data across most of the Eastern Bloc. And most of the Eastern Bloc wants a return to communism, right? That they view the period of time that they were under communism to be better. And in some places, it's as high as 60%. Like, people are looking at the old communist era and being like, yeah, that was a better way to live. It was a better economy. And of course, there are exceptions, but for the most part, it's across the board. So when people are saying that after the USR, they were able to flourish and prosper, I literally don't know what they're talking about. Like, it's as if somebody watched somebody get crushed by a bus and then they said, wow, what a spry, healthy individual. Like, that's the level of detachment and delusion that we're talking about. Milo, what are you whining about, buddy? What are you whining about? Are you whining about peanut butter? This is peanut butter brine? Dude, you got all the peanut butter in the world. There you go, bud. Have fun. Like, yeah, I tested positive on the rapid test. Nowhere to report it or anything. Yep, I've been lucky so far. Only moderate symptoms. Well, hopefully it stays that way. I'm actually interested to know the real history of that region. Honestly, Eric, man, like, the Wikipedia articles are very straightforward. Like, you just need to dig a tiny little bit deeper than the beginning summary, right? Like, this is how you can learn about the Georgian War, right? Like, we have this idea that, like, oh, Putin wanted to seize resources in Georgia, and so he pushed in. When the Americans invaded Iraq, he pushed into Georgia. And it's literally like, you can go to the Wikipedia page of Georgia and like sift about, like go to the subcategories, right? Keep clicking, and you'll learn about how NATO was attempting to place military bases, that they formed a coup, the Rose Revolution, right? Like, the story of what happened in Georgia is the same story that what happened in Ukraine. NATO couped the government of Georgia and was attempting to place military bases in there so that they could aggress against Russia. And Putin said, no, like, I'm not going to let you do that, right? Same story here. And you literally can just go to the Wikipedia page. Like, that's how embarrassing this is getting for these guys now, right? Like, everybody on the left says that Wikipedia has been infected by CIA agents and all this kind of stuff. But I think that narrative is itself CIA propaganda, right? That Wikipedia is like, there are lots of people who actively work on Wikipedia to make sure that what you're seeing on Wikipedia is actually, like, sourced, right? Like, I've seen behind the scenes conversations on Wikipedia articles, especially the Azov Battalion, for example. Like, people saying in these Wikipedia articles, in the talk about section of Wikipedia, asking for the stripping of the reality that the Azov Battalion is a Nazi regime, is a Nazi battalion. And the responses from the people doing the work is literally like, look, this isn't your fucking blog, right? Like, these are sourced documents that if you think they are incredible or incredulous, then you need to come up with a reason for why the FBI, the CIA, the State Department are wrong on this, right? That the Azov Battalion is a Nazi battalion. And I'm seeing those kinds of conversations actually happen on Wikipedia. And so I think that the rhetoric that the CIA has taken over Wikipedia is itself CIA propaganda. That there are lots of people who work on Wikipedia and view Wikipedia in the way that it's meant to be viewed, which is as a source of information. And also, I'm of the opinion that even the CIA wants that to be the case, right? There's got to be some place where people can actually have a meaningful conversation surrounding actual source documents, right? Like, it can't all be total nightmarish chaos, right? Like, there does actually need to be some organization that's attempting to try to figure out what the proof is, right? And I'm very impressed with Wikipedia and how it has defended itself against the censorship that has tried to come through and tried to remove from Wikipedia the idea that the Azov Battalion is anything other than a complete and total Nazi battalion, right? So if you want to learn more about the Eastern Bloc, pick Romania. Romania, like, this is what I do. I do this all the time. Like, this is Wikipedia. You go to Wikipedia, you click here, right? Click here, Romania. Here you go. There's the Romanian flag. Here's where it is, right? And you got like a little summary. You got a kind of thing. And I know this isn't what people want when they're asking. Like, they want something like more bite-sized, but that's not how it works, right? Oh, hey, an etymology. Romania derives from the local name for Romanian, which in turn derives from Latin Romanus, meaning Roman or of Rome. I love etymology, guys. I love etymology. Anyway, and people really do value and spend a lot of time on this shit. And if something doesn't have a source, they tell you, right? And what people are trying to do now is hide crucial information in subcategories, right? So there'll be like a passing mention of like the Rose Revolution. This is what happens with the Georgian example that I gave on Wikipedia. That they'll just talk about, and they'll say like, and then the Rose Revolution occurred, right? So then you click on the Rose Revolution, and that expands that, and it gets more precise. And then you got to click on like the causes for the Rose Revolution and the lead up to the Rose Revolution. That opens that up. And then you find out, oh, it's literally under the original George Bush, they couped the government of Georgia and then tried to install a NATO-like leadership in order to join NATO. And Putin said, that's not going to happen, right? Like, that's what happened in Georgia. And but you got to kind of dig a little bit, right? They're not going to just show it to you. But NATO and EU integration, right? The contemporary period. And for the most part, this stuff's going to be accurate, right? Like I get really worried that people get really are suspicious of Wikipedia. And I'm here to tell you, man, like, if you're suspicious of something you're reading on Wikipedia, just like, so for example, Romania still faces problems related to infrastructure. Click. Romania infrastructure and international transport links assessment of the Romanian economy. That's from Romania Central. Right? Like, these are good sources. Like, these are good, solid sources. Like, sometimes you can click on it and it will be like the sun. Right? Like, that does happen. But like, this place is really trying. Like, it really actually is. And all you got to do is spend time on it, right? And the more time you spend on it, the more you know, right? And I would argue that the amount of times where you find something that's like kind of shitty or kind of just like way less than the amount of excellent, really solid information that you get out of Wikipedia, right? Contemporary period. After the 1989 revolution, the National Salvation Front, led by Ion Ilescu, took part of a multi-party democratic and free market measures. Right? So you're looking at the neoliberal period coming in. In April 1990, a sit-in protest contesting the results of that year's legislative elections and accusing the NSF, including Ilescu, of being made up of former communists and members of the Securiat, grew rapidly to become what was called the Golanad, right? So now you can like click on this and open that up and find out, okay, who are these guys? Who's funding these guys, right? Like, don't take everything at surface value. Don't just be like, that's what happened because it said so. Like, open that up. Who funded those guys, right? It's hard work. It's difficult, right? That's why I have this fucking channel because it's a fucking job. And I wish I could spend more time doing it. Right? I wish I could spend more time doing this kind of research. I really do. Like, I really do. I wish I could spend way more time doing this kind of research than I actually do. But I got to spend a ton of time making money for capitalists, right? So that's what I do. No, I love this, man. Nevertheless, there have been efforts to tackle corruption. A national anti-corruption dictatorate was formed in the country in 2002. In Transparency International's 2019 Corruption Perceptions Index, Romania's public sector corruption score deteriorated to 44 out of 100, reversing gains made in the previous year, right? Like, and as you guys know about my analysis in regards to Russia and Putin himself, like, there's a lot of complexity, right? There's a lot of complexity. Like, you can have leaders who are like well-meaning but incompetent. You can have leaders who are not well-meaning at all, right? But it's not obvious, and so you got to just kind of sift through it, right? In 2009, the country was bailed out by the International Monetary Fund, right? After an aftershock. It's like Romania, yeah. Is Romania's economy doing really well? Well, it had to be bailed out by the International Monetary Fund, and we all know how the International Monetary Fund works. So, like, Romania is underneath the boot of the International Monetary Fund as a default, right? It's like this idea that like the post-Soviet era, like all of these countries are doing well. I'm just like, where is that coming from? Like, it's nothing but propaganda. And it's such a shame because we have this immensely powerful tool at our disposal. And like, what's annoying is that there are so many times where I literally just read the Wikipedia article about the history of the region or whatever, and then I go have a conversation with some regular citizen about what's happening in the world, and I just talk about the history of it, and they're like, "Oh, you're just a loser commie," because you know it doesn't align with what they saw on CNN or CBC or Fox or any of this bullshit. Which I ultimately think is completely dangerous. Like, it's just a dangerous way to run a society. Like, we can't even have a meaningful conversation based on sources that exist. Like, oh, Jesus. And meanwhile, China locked down the whole of Shanghai and preventing it from spreading to the rest of the country, and Western media is pointing their fingers, scrutinizing that. Yeah, I'll be curious to see, like, if that's effective or not. Like, there was this really interesting video that I saw come out where the people of Shanghai in a section went to their balconies and sang a song together, and it was like a little protest that they put on, right? And the government sent a drone a drone that had like a pre-recorded message, and the drone was going throughout the buildings saying like, please return into your units, right? Like that this we see that this is a protest, like please return. And it was creepy. Like don't get me wrong, like it was pretty creepy to see. Honestly, but then I thought to myself, like, yeah, you know what we would have done here? We would have just sent cops in and beat the shit out of people. So, Pandemic has been around 3 years to run, yeah, but the masses have had enough. Yep, I think that's right. And to me, Jinho, I look at it as it's a kind of blowback on our policies. It's a form of blowback that has occurred because of our insistence to because we didn't know how to handle it. Because we didn't know how to handle it, and so we did like this heavy-handed approach that had a lot of blowback, and it's that constant fight with ourselves. It's the constant internal struggle that has been the hardest part, and so people are just kind of throwing up their hands and giving up the ghost. But now we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? So instead of it being just like a difficulty that we all faced together, there's like this extra layer of internal struggle. And it's just added a lot of problems. And of course, it just means that this whole thing is going to be a fucking disaster. I think a mistake they made was to constantly add measures and take them away rather than just keep them in place. That back and forth, I agree, Branwyn. And also, like, I think there was a big degree, especially in the United States, where they weren't really being straight with us, right? Like, I really wish there were lots of times where... So the clearest example I have is that Fauci initially comes out and says, oh, don't worry about masks. Masks aren't a thing, right? And then later on comes out and says masks are a thing. And the reason, and he said all this, you can see all this, the reason he initially said that masks weren't a thing is because he knew that we didn't have enough masks. And so he didn't want to create a run on masks. And I really wish he had just come out initially and been like, okay, masks are a thing, but we're low on supply, so please follow these sort of measures and guidelines and be considerate. Understanding that huge sections of the populate are not going to be considerate, right? But at least then it maintains your internal credibility. And there was a lot of that kind of stuff that happened, where it's like, we choose to lie to the public for this kind of reason. But ultimately, that just erodes confidence. And eroding confidence in the very moment that you need to have confidence, it's the thing that really hurt the whole conversation, frankly. But I mean, that's America, baby. Like, we literally just lie to each other for fun. Like, that's how we roll. About 2 years before the pandemic, I took an anthropology and infectious disease course. As soon as I saw the news articles in like 2019 about a new virus, I called it. Yeah. Well, we're gonna get a definite upswing. Do I know the history of inoculation? Not offhand. Like, is there something cool? Something you want me to take a look at? We did not kill David Lynch. David Lynch is alive and well. How dare you, sir? It's going to be sad when he goes, though, for sure. Like, David Lynch is just a beautiful fairy creature that we've been blessed. He's just graced us with his presence, gave us a lot of weird media and a lot of weird art, and now he's spending his twilight years, like, drawing a ball out of a jar for us. I'm just like, what a gift. What a treasure. Get ready for 4th, 5th, and 6th vaccine shot by November, yeah. The ruble is now linked to gold. Is that true? The ruble's now linked to gold? Interesting choice. Interesting choice. Going back to a gold standard is an interesting choice for Putin. I don't really care, right? Like, linking your currency to a hard asset like gold, in my perception, is actually pretty limiting. That's the reason why they got off the gold standard and instead decided to go towards a fiat currency, because fiat currencies are more agile. That said, the reason why they could get away with being a fiat currency in the United States is because they were the dominant superpower. That the dollar was so integrated into the international community that they couldn't, that people couldn't get away from it. Whereas people can get away from the ruble, and so tying the ruble to gold it stabilizes the currency, certainly. Like, I don't really look at this and make decisions about gold standard or fiat currency or anything as judgments. You know what I mean? Like, I don't look at fiat currencies and say they are intrinsically bad, right? And I don't look at a gold standard and say that is intrinsically bad. There are pros and there are cons to both. And right now, I think that Russia is probably looking at stability, right? And like everybody is probably looking at stability. And so linking the ruble to gold is probably not a bad idea. It gives a lot of stability, which was always the argument and is the argument from the gold standard people, like the people like Ron Paul, right? Like they want to go back to the gold standard because it is stable. It still kind of has its own idiocies and its own idiosyncrasies, and it's still like an oddity. Like, oh, we're tying our currency to this shiny rock that we pulled out of the ground, and that gives it its intrinsic value. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it might be a good idea to have like a limiting factor like that, to limit the power of your currency on purpose, in order to stabilize it, right? It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. I'm no fan of Chinese government, but their zero COVID policy is working. I mean, the Chinese government is a very interesting government. It's an extraordinarily interesting government to me. That they've got a lot of idiosyncrasies. They've got a lot of interesting stuff. But like I was just describing, I think their primary focus is stability. That they're looking for stability. How do we stabilize during all of this? And they're constantly working to move towards stability. And the structure of the government is very fascinating, right? The National People's Congress, which again, where are we ending up? Wikipedia, right? Is a brilliant, like it. Brilliant's not the right word, but it's definitely like, it's unique. It's very interesting. They have worked very hard to try to integrate fully into the society a structure that persists for for generations is what they're really trying to do. They're trying to make it so that, like, from Mao to Deng, from Deng to Xi, from Xi to whoever, and from whoever to whoever, and that there's a continuance, right? And part of that is that, like, the National People's Congress is it's simultaneously a governing body, but it's also an educational body. That the citizens of China vote for a person to go to the National People's Congress, but the National People's Congress don't just, like, it's not like it is in the United States where, you got voted by the Shanghai region, and so you are the ruler of Shanghai, right? Like, that's not how it is. That when you go to the National People's Congress, they're like, okay, great, welcome. Here are governing principles. We are going to give you control over this village of 1,000 people, right? We're going to let you have that control for a year. And then we're going to talk to you about it. And then we're going to ask you questions. And we're going to figure things out. And we're going to see, are you any good at this? Right? Maybe you suck at this, right? It's not like it is here in the West, where it's like, oh, you won a popularity contest and now you're the king or the governor, if you prefer, of Florida. Right? And you can literally pass legislation in Florida because you won a popularity contest. Like that's not how it is in China at all. And they put their, like, Xi Jinping, the current leader of China, went through this process. Right? You start at 1,000, and then it's 10,000, and then it's 20,000, and then it's 100,000, and then it's 1,000,000, and then it's a city, and then it's a whole jurisdiction, and then it's the whole fucking country, right? Like, and it's step by step by step by step, and the entire time there's like a constant analysis and conversation, which is why the leaders of China before Xi Jinping, people think very well of them in China and in the National People's Congress because they really ruled by consensus. You know, like Xi Jinping has a very strong, what we call like a cult following or any of this kind of stuff. But he's a very, like, he is a figure, like he's on the same level as Mao now, right? In the Chinese communist history. Whereas those other guys are kind of like, you know, they were just sort of go-betweens. But everybody really respected them because they ruled by this consensus system that exists within the party or exists within the structure. That it isn't like people pretend like Xi Jinping can just stand up and be like, we're going to do this because I decide. It's just literally not how it goes. Anyway, I have lots of opinions about the Chinese government and their structure, and I highly recommend that everybody read this. Like, understanding the structure, right? And this is very thorough, right? Powers and duties to amend the Constitution, oversee its enforcement, to enact basic legislation, right? And you get into the... So you can see, like, of course it's democratic. Here's the fucking structure of it. And then you have the an internal group that arises from the NPC that is itself elected by the NPC. And the idea that it's a dictatorship is immediately falsifiable. Like, look at it. These other colors that you're seeing here, like, these are other parties. The gray blob here are independents, right? So there's huge segment of this that is not part of the Communist Party. And it would be very interesting to see if the Communist Party starts to weaken, and then there's like a ruler by consensus. But the issue, of course, with that idea is that the Communist Party of China is actually quite popular. People are quite pleased with the Chinese Communist Party in China. Anytime we've polled them, they come out being like, yeah. What do you mean China is locked down on Shanghai? It hasn't spread to the rest of the country? No, I'm not debating that. Like I say, like I'm a bit like, and I think it comes down to I just don't know enough. I think that's where I'll land. You know, like your belief in it is sure. I just don't know enough, so I'm not gonna die on this hill. That's maybe the way to say it. They should have switched a lot of sectors to remote working, but my commercial real estate sector, yeah, no shit, eh? Like, dude, landlords in general, right? Read on immunity and inoculation by Ulabis. All right, cool. Considering their population, they have controlled the spread of the virus the best. That's for sure the truth. No, that's for sure the truth. The Jobbik Party is the extreme right-wing party in Hungary, yeah. China has done far better than Canada, no shit. Well, China's doing better than everybody for lots of reasons. Like, EU expansion was linked to NATO expansion to Russia's border in a neoliberal, neoconservative political project. EU and NATO are unsustainable as a result. Yeah, I think that's pretty... the question, Jinho, is how much damage are they going to do on their way out? Right? How much damage are they going to do on their way out? John, can you cover Zombie by the Cranberries? I can, but I can't play it on the stream because then my stream will get demonetized. That's the problem. So sorry, Famita. You know what I will do? You know what I could do is I could just play it and then like clip it and then just put it on the Discord. Yeah, I could do that. That would be easy to do. And then I don't mind if that little clip doesn't get monetized. That's fine. An annoying thing is happening on my stream, though. Every single time I upload this stream, they say, oh, it's limited, and then I challenge it, and then they come back and they say, oh, it's actually not limited. And so I'm like, well, anyway. Zero COVID policy doesn't work when large populations have no access to treatment, containment resources, or vaccines because they don't have enough money. Maybe that's kind of an interesting point, actually, Matthias, I hadn't thought about. Like, lockdowns, like, Chinese lockdowns are likely effective because they also are coming with lots of resources and lots of different tools. So people are locked down, but they also get access to these medicines and the tests and all that kind of stuff. Whereas when we did lockdowns, we were basically just like, lockdown, fuck you, right? Like, what are you going to do? Right? So it didn't, like, our lockdowns don't work because we're not actually locking down, right? Which is something I actually remember myself saying during the period of time. Like, we never actually did a real lockdown. Like, our lockdowns were so fake and bullshit. They were just like, kind of faffy and nonsense. The flourish and prosperous is basically right-wing libertarian propaganda. Yeah, of course. Well, the libertarians live in a dream world in the first place, so you can say what you like. Right? Like, the best way to structure a society is to destroy the society. The corporations that rule us just need more power. The problem is the institution that the corporations own in order to make decisions. If we got rid of that institution and let the corporations just rule by fiat, things would be better. No, there's no such thing as monopolies. Like, that's libertarianism. Ukraine was one of the countries that benefited the most under the Soviet Union. I mean, and how could it not? Like, the Soviet Union, like, any federated body, like Russia and all of this, like, Ukraine is enormously important for food production, right? Fertilizer production, basic agricultural kind of shit, right? Like, that's why the famine that hit Ukraine was actually such a big deal, right? Because it is like, it's the breadbasket for the world, and people are very concerned, and rightly so, that this crisis that's happening in Ukraine is going to have profound effects on the world food supply, right? Like, the Russians are trying not to interfere. That's why whenever you look at like military data, it's always very much like the Russians are on the border. They're not going into the heartland, which of course fuels the Western propaganda that like, we've stopped them, they're not coming in because they're scared and all. And it's like, no, they just don't want to destroy the agricultural sector of Ukraine, right? But it's still tumultuous. It's still tragic, obviously. It's still like you're smashing everything apart. And so I can see a lot of farmers being like, I don't even know. Can I commit to this? Oh my God. Like, just that kind of instability and destabilization can lead to a lot of problems. And it's going to have reverberations in the world because lots of people rely on Ukrainian grain and just Ukrainian food, right? So, and like this, that's what, and in my view also is another reason why the narrative surrounding the USSR, like, Stalin did a famine in Ukraine on purpose. It's like, what, is he stupid? Like, why would he do that? Like literally the Soviet Union relies on the stability of Ukraine to feed their own people and to have a stable federated body and a stable society. The idea that Stalin would create a famine in Ukraine on purpose. Why? Is he a psycho? Like, no, not even a psycho. Like, a psycho wouldn't do that. Like, is he just like, what is he? Like, what's the argument? Like, is he stupid? Like, to really believe that the famine was generated on purpose by the Communist Party of Russia, you've genuinely got to believe that Stalin and then everyone underneath them is just like baby-brained stupid. Like, baby-brained stupid. Like, yeah, it's a good idea to do that thing to the Ukrainian. Like, literally on that kind of level. And in the meantime, of course, like, we're guilty of manufacturing famines in Ireland on purpose. The Bangladeshi famine, the current famine that's going on in Afghanistan, right? Like, so it's just projection, if you ask me. It's just projection. Other nations also do this completely psychopathic thing that we do a lot. That's what it really is. Would be nice if Serb gets reinstated now that COVID numbers are spiking back up. That's not going to happen, dude. That's not going to happen. They're not going to make that mistake again. They can't even increase ODSP. Yeah. The CIA is CIA propaganda. That's funny. Jugmeat is a millionaire. He ain't in a hurry to help 60% of us that's struggling to feed our families. Yeah. Absolutely, dude. I'll write him another friendly letter to Doug Ford asking him to increase ODSP amounts. Yeah. Jugmeat is also a member of the WEF. He gets a check from Klaus Schwab. I've actually come down quite a bit about this WEF thing. Like, it's a club for these politicians. That's all. They just like go and have like little club conversations with one another. That's it. Like, I don't think it's sinister. I think that's really what it comes down to. Like, when I compare the WEF and its existence and what happens there to literally what the owners do and how they are, like, it's small potato shit. Like, the conversations that happen at the WEF are interesting but ultimately inconsequential, is maybe the way that I would put it. That the conversations that happen between Justin Trudeau and David Thompson are way more important than the conversations that Justin Trudeau is having with anyone at the WEF and like Klaus Schwab and all these guys. Like, who cares, right? The owners of the society right? That's David here in Canada. That's David Thompson, the Galen family, Joseph Tsai, the Pattison groups, the Irvings for Christ's sakes, right? Like those are the owners of the society, and the conversations that happen between like if you're talking about New Brunswick and you're not talking about the Irvings, then you're not talking about New Brunswick. Because New Brunswick is owned by the Irvings. They own it, right? And so, like, the conversation that Justin Trudeau is having with somebody like Klaus Schwab in the WEF and any of that kind of stuff is way less consequential than the conversations he has with the Irvings, right? Which is why we know about the conversations that he has with Klaus Schwab and all these guys. And we don't know about the conversations he has with the Irvings, right? Like, that's the big thing that convinces me that the WEF essentially exists as just a distraction, right? It just essentially exists as like a little thing that, look, all the politicians are in a room together. Look, oh, these guys are all saying a kind of thing. Oh, the Great Reset, everybody. Hey, like, we better talk about this, 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 talk about this. Don't bother talking about the genuine conversations that must be going on between Justin Trudeau and David Thompson, the wealthiest Canadian. Right? Don't talk about the conversations that Justin Trudeau must be having with the Weston family. Right? Don't talk about those things. Those extremely serious conversations that must occur that they don't publish and nobody knows anything about. Right? Talk instead about this little distraction off in the corner that doesn't manifest into anything and is worthless. Like, the WEF is not a threat to us. Right? It genuinely isn't. Like, how is it actually a threat? Like, in what meaningful way does it actually alter anything about our existence? It is more or less just like a boys' club. Like, it's not, no decisions come out of it. Nothing is like maybe they have like, it's an opportunity for these guys to sort of field a propaganda idea or something at best, right? But the actual decisions that are actually being made happen between the owners. Doesn't happen to the fucking WEF. He's a capitalist plant in a fake leftist movement. Yeah, but that's nothing new. You just described the entire Democratic Party. Like, that's the whole Democratic Party. Yeah, just look at who has edited the article. You can learn a lot. There's a reason why they teach fact-checking in university and not public school. Yeah, that's a good point, Famita. Yeah. BC Labour Minister has just introduced Bill 10, which will ensure single-step certification when at least 55% of the employees in a workplace sign union cards. So, Aditi, can you maybe... I don't know if I understand what you are saying here. Can you maybe, like, break that down for me for, like, what that actually means in a more meaningful way? Like, it'll ensure single-step verification or certification when at least 55% of the employees in a workplace sign union cards. So does that mean that the BC Labour Minister has just introduced a bill which will say to people who, if 55% of the workforce sign a union card, then that approves that union? Is that essentially what you just said there? Because if so, that's sweet. Like, everybody should union. Everybody, like, we should union. We should abandon the workplace. We should strike. We should literally, like, just, like, absolutely stop participating in this society. Like, the idea, like Famita, I took a look at that Wall Street Journal video, right? Wall Street Journal did a video following the supply chain from the ports from the Chinese factory to the ports to the Amazon factory to the delivery people, right? All the way through, talking about what the entire supply chain looks like. And in my view, it's a fucking demonic institution that should be immediately dismantled. Like, the idea that we are funneling this much chaotic energy, right? And it's chaotic energy, right? Into the idea that someone can get like a fucking LOL doll or a pair of Nike shoes or something, right? Like, who gives a fuck? And you listen to these guys like the truckers. The truckers are absolutely getting hyper fucked. Like, these guys need to union up hard. They need to union up fucking hard. And like, the warehouse workers need to union up. The delivery drivers need to union up. The whole thing needs to become unionized. But if you ask me, like if I was the leader of the country all of a sudden, I would be like, this whole thing exists so some fucking soccer mom can give her children garbage. Get fucked. Like, get fucked. Like, this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, like, we deserve what's going to come with climate change. Like, we deserve it, right? Like, the entire structure of Amazon should not exist. Stop. Stop this madness. Sorry you can't get your LOL dolls. Sorry you can't get your Nike shoes. Sorry you can't get any of this shit. Like, sorry that all of the garbage that you have defined your life by, right, can't come to your doorstep the day you order it, right? Sorry that the hardship that exists in your life is that you can't get cheap garbage delivered to your door directly from China. Like, unbelievable, dude. And in order to achieve it, you're looking at like exploitation at the port level, exploitation at the truck drivers, exploitation from the workforce, exploitation from the delivery force. Like, everyone's getting completely fucked over. And while everyone in the supply chain is getting totally fucked over, Jeff Bezos is shooting rockets into space and having people dismantle bridges so he can get his fucking super yachts through. And it really genuinely is so that fucking Karens can give a piece of garbage to their children so their kids will go, haha, well, that was fun, garbage bin. That's what it's for. It's manic, it's crazed, it's demonic, and insane. The whole structure from point A to point Z is nuts. And the whole thing, in my view, should be dismantled. Like, it's evil. Like, the whole structure of it. It's not job creation, right? It's none of that. Like, it's total trash. And we literally could pass legislation to ensure everybody had access to food and shelter and the base necessities of life. Forget about this job creation nightmare nonsense, right? And say to these selfish brats, and I don't mean the children, I mean the Karens, you don't need to buy that trash. You don't need it. It's literal garbage that you're actively throwing in the bin. Right? You're literally having a piece of trash delivered to your doorstep from China so that you can be the one to throw it away. Like, when are we going to grow up? Like for real. Like, when are we going to grow up? Because if we don't, we're going to get completely ramrodded. Like, we're going to get completely fucking ramrodded. Like, the shit that's coming for us is going to be incredible. Like, and when it starts happening, all of the delusions that these liberals have been under, that like, oh, we can just technology our way out of it. Like, no, we're not going to do that. We're fucking not going to do that. When your air conditioner blows up because the heat is 1,000 degrees, because it's the fucking sun, like, you're not going to technology your way out of this. Just stop ordering trash from China to be delivered to your door so that you are the one that throws it out. The People's Republic of China has a stable government that practices democracy based on competence and meritocracy. We in the West do not care to study this system of governance. I'd say that's fairly accurate, Jinho. Like, we've just decided that it must be a dictatorship because it's not Western parliamentary democracy. Right? Like, it's not our specific form of government, and therefore it's a dictatorship. Like, this is the level of nuance that exists in our discourse, right? Like, there can't be multiple forms of democracy. There can't be multiple different ways of doing it. And, like, my favorite is when we call anything that China does authoritarian. Because it's like, they passed a law, and then they follow that law. Authoritarian! Like, when are we going to grow up, man? Yeah, Western democracy, high school popularity contest, for sure. For sure. Western democracy, guy with the best hair gets the vote. I mean, that's what's happening with Trudeau. Our democracy goes to the highest bidder. Only the super rich have to have a say. Oligarchs, part of our heritage, yeah. It's essentially card check. I think that's what it means, but I was just copy-pasting from Twitter. Oh, okay. But, like, that's good. Everybody should unionize. Everybody should unionize. Everybody should strike. Everybody should quit their job. Like, I don't understand why students go to school. Like, I don't get it. Like, to learn what, to do what, for what purpose? Like, there's not a future. Like, that's over. Like, that's done, right? Like, if I'm 16, every single day should just be like, go to school and strike. Like, no, we're not going to bother with this. We're not. I don't care, right? This institution has no validity, right? There's nothing valid to learn from it, right? Like, it genuinely, like, imagine you walked into a room and the class was woodworking 101, right? And the guy that was trying to teach you said, okay, we're going to learn woodworking 101. And then he picked up a brick and said, okay, here's a piece of wood. How much woodworking do you think you would learn from that guy? Right? Is it exactly 0? Do you think you would spend the time to learn woodworking from a guy that thinks a brick is a piece of wood? Right? That's essentially what our society has done. Okay, today we're going to teach you about how to live in a stable society. Step 1, burn the place down. No. Like, no. Every institution in Canada, every single one, no exceptions. There is an exception. Strip joints are legitimate because they offer exactly what they offer, and you get exactly what you say. They promise exactly what they promise, and you get that. So that has validity. Everything else, the banks, the government, the schools, the universities, the churches, all of them are completely invalid. Like, you don't need to listen to them. They're teaching you absolute trash. There's literally nothing to learn. Like, there are lots of words said, but what they're entrenching in your mind is like a false inverted reality that is completely fake and will be confronted in a serious way by the fucking earth itself. That earth itself will say, oh, that's cute that you think that. So now your towns are burning down. What now? Like, what now? Right? Like, we have nothing important to say to literally anyone. And the fact that we're teaching this garbage to our children, like, it's an abomination. Like, our children should revolt entirely. Like, their lives should be a revolution from the outset. That they should be demanding of everyone around them that this trash goes away. Immediately. There's no reason to fucking learn anything from us. Like, we've got nothing to teach. Like, we're a bloodthirsty, genocidal, psychopathic nation whose only achievement is cleansing this land so that we could steal it. Like, we've got nothing important to say. At this point, they've taken so much, it would take Mr. Robot level action to get it back. Yeah. Thanks for doing the wiki spell. It does kind of make me feel better when I do use. I always had a lot of drawback from people, whether they're from Academy or regular people. Also, you have to use Britannica. Have you used Britannica? If so, what is your opinion of them? Stuffy old men. That's all. Not really very relevant anymore. Is my big thing. Like, Wikipedia does just as good a job, but Britannica does everything it can to get in the way, right? Whereas Wikipedia is just like, here's Wikipedia. Hey guys, we're getting low on money. Can we have some money? Thanks. Britannica is very much like, welcome to the halls. Here we blink. And to actually get something into Britannica so that it actually alters, like, and changes what it is. Like, you don't... In Wikipedia, you're literally like, oh, this institution over here said this thing, and so I'm going to edit this, and everybody's going to look at it and be like, yeah, that institution said that, you sourced it, we're good, and off to the races you go, right? Whereas in Britannica, it's like this slow so like, they're not as agile. Their entire service is just like very much, like, maybe they've changed. I haven't gone on Britannica for so long because I found them to be so obtuse. Like, it literally felt like the difference between, like, a cassette player and an MP3. Just like, there are superior models, and they exist in the world. Yeah, also stop buying useless crap from China because you do a disservice to the workers of China. Will China collapse if people stop buying garbage produced for sale in the Western world? No. The people will be refocused to a better task. This is what can be accomplished in command economies. Yeah. I mean, I think that's sort of the end game for China, right? That China knows that eventually this arrangement between the United States and China ends, right? That's why they're building up their own international community and their own international organizations, right? And they really took advantage of the incompetence of the American ruling class. Like, the Americans literally dismantled their manufacturing base and shipped it to China. Okay, like, I can't imagine, like that's a fait accompli. Like, can you imagine? Like, and now all of a sudden, like, people like Trump stand up. I remember Trump being like, how did they get all that manufacturing? It was like a miracle. It was like a miracle. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a miracle. It was an abandonment. It was a betrayal by the rulers of America. They wanted cheap labor in China, so they shipped all their manufacturing over to China, and then China said, cool, now we have all the manufacturing. Like, how is this not even considered as a national security issue? Like, this is the incompetence that we're talking about. Yeah, China doesn't abandon their partners. Honestly, the reason I use Britannica is because it is considered a scholarly source, which tends to be a very slow process. And yeah, that's and that's fine, Eric. Like, I guess that's where I come down on Britannica. It's like, fine. I don't really use it. Maybe I should, right? Maybe I should go back to the Britannica. I just feel like the last. You know what, man? You've convinced me. Britannica. Like, maybe they've updated this. Maybe it's better, right? Maybe it actually is. Like, part of the benefit of Wikipedia is that, like, I'm literally like World Wars in Greater Romania. Okay. Main articles. Okay, let's go to the main article. Okay, Kingdom of Romania was neutral for the first. Oh, World War. Let's go to World War One, right? Like, oh, okay. Let's central. What are these central powers? What are we talking about? Oh, let's learn. And you can, like, literally just dart around. Whereas my understanding of Britannica is very much like, I don't know, World War II. Easy. Right, World War II. Okay, so this first of all, we've got, okay, but I can do that. Okay, so that's good. All right, they got a similar thing going on here. Oh, this is fine. Right, Great Britain, great. And then we're into Great Britain. That's kind of annoying, but that's fine. That's kind of annoying. Yeah. I think I'm going to land on that. Just fine. Fine. That's fine. It has a paywall now, Britannica, on certain things. I don't know if this is always the case. Like, if you search communism, let's go. Communism. What is communism? Communism, political economic doctrine. Access the full article. You see what I'm talking about? Fuck you. Like, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Like, access the full article. Get fucked. Like, there's a reason why the Britannica is fading away. There's a reason why he's fading away. Hey, Box, how you doing, bud? Good opportunity to say, guys, like, share, subscribe. Please tell other people I exist. Let people know. Tell a friend. Tell your wives. Tell everybody. Spread it around. Right? We're a growing movement. We're trying to make it happen. Consider donating. Even $1 helps. This little button right here makes it happen. My Patreon gets you into the Discord. Thank you very much for those of you who do donate. Thank you very much, guys. I hope one day to be able to pay my rent with just this channel, man. I hope it gets there. I really do, because it's this is, like, in my view, the reason why I want to be doing this is because there's so many times where I look around in our media and I'm just like, nobody's talking about this, and there's so many things that I'm just like, we should be focusing on this. Like, this is what's important. This is the linchpin. Like, for example, in the Ukrainian crisis, what's the linchpin, guys? What have I been talking about the whole time? The Donbass war, right? And we just don't talk about it. And the people who are downplaying it, the people who are pretending like it doesn't exist, I got a big problem with that. So that's what this channel is all about. All right, this ad brought to you by John. This is John Radio, Jon Radio. Yeah, greed blinded the wealthy in the West for sure. Yeah, greed blinds the greedy. Yeah. Donald Trump is a populist who articulates the incoherent rage of the masses who were betrayed for decades by owners of the United States. He was got at, of course, once he won the electoral college. I mean, people treat Donald Trump like he's a fascist. Donald Trump is not a fascist. He is just Donald Trump. Like, he doesn't have a coherent political ideology. He is just Donald Trump, right? He's willing to tolerate fascists, which is pretty bad, right? His sort of famous moment where he said, oh, lots of people on good sides, right? And oh, those guys should stand back and what was the exact phrasing? It was like stand back and stand by, right? Your platform is a hit, John. Keep on keeping on. You're a very capable communicator, open to discourse. Thank you, Harry. Bless you, bud. Bless you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I know your strategy, Harry. You're sitting there going like, well, I'm not going to give John any money, but I'll give him flattery. And you know what, Harry? I'll take it. I'll take it. Look, Donald Trump's ambition was to be the president, right? And that's it. Like that's why when you actually look at his presidential record, he's a very ineffectual, he doesn't really do anything, right? Like a lot of people try to say of Trump that like, well, he did less warring and he did all kind of stuff. It's like not like, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care about any of this, right? Like he all he wants to do is be the president. And that's the fundamental bottom line for me on Donald Trump. Right? Like, in many ways, I'd rather have Donald Trump than Joe Biden. Because, like, Joe Biden still says the old bullshit that we're all supposed to swallow. That it's like, yeah, we're doing this because God bless America and it's for our freedom and we're going to show people the unity of our culture and all. Whereas Donald Trump is just like, yeah, we go over there and we bomb people, you know? Sometimes you got to kill a bad guy. It's just like, it's kind of refreshing. You know, there's something refreshing about just the juvenile honesty, right? He's too dumb to know that he should lie, right? Turning all my relations onto your channel. Thank you, Harry. I appreciate it. People love making capitalists richer, yeah? Massive Stockholm Syndrome masochism. I think that's right. Like, if you believe it, like if you fall into this belief that like capitalism's the greatest system in the world, like then you can do the stupidest things imaginable and like everybody goes along with it. I would say that Trump and Trumpists are attempting to build a personal proto-fascist movement. A personalist proto-fascist movement. Like, don't get me wrong, right? You guys know me. I'm no fan of the Nazis, right? And there are definitely fascists in the movement, and there are definitely, like, the Ku Klux Klan is seeing a resurgence and all of this kind of stuff. But I think that that's mainly opportunistic. That I think it's the word of the day is opportunism, right? It's not like Mussolini. It's not like Hitler. It's not like those European moments where these guys were like, straight up, like, let's build a fascist movement, right? Like that. But a guy like Trump is going to watch that movement get built underneath him, and he's basically going to be fine with it, right? And that movement is going to come out of the Trumpist movement. So I'm not trying to downplay the seriousness of Donald Trump. I'm just trying to, like, I mean, we should fight back as if there is a proto-fascist movement, because there is. It's just that Donald Trump's not the guy. You know what I mean? Like, Trump is mainly a clown, right? He's a clown that wants to be the president and then got to be the president, and then he's going to be the president again, right? So I just think there's a lot of energy that gets put towards Trump, and how should I say this properly? Like, it's the boy who cried wolf problem, right? If all you ever do is stand up and scream fascist, then when the real fascist shows up, people are going to take it just as seriously. They're going to be like, yeah, you were saying that Trump was a fascist. And it was like the same as Biden. And then when the actual fascist shows up, and there's some very serious fucking individuals showing up in American politics. When the actual fascist shows up, who's actually going to say out loud the things that fascists actually say, which is, hey, you know this Mexican border crisis that we're having here where we've got a whole bunch of facilities filled up with Mexicans? We should just burn them to death. Right? Like, that's what the fascists are going to say. Right? Like, Trump doesn't say that. Trump's like, build the wall, da-ba-da. Like, he's an idiot. Like, when Hitler rose to power, he literally was doing so holding onto a book that said we should round up and incinerate the Jews. Like, that's fascism. And I worry that if we constantly look at just the people we don't like and scream fascism, then when the real fascists show up, people will just be like, nah, well, what are you going to do? Yeah, what are you going to do? Milo, buddy, you're out of peanut butter, dude. You're out of peanut butter. The peanut butter is gone. There's no more peanut butter, Milo. That's it. Why don't you chew on your chicken leg? Why don't you chew on your chicken leg, huh? You like the chicken leg. This is it for the peanut butter, bud. Sorry, buddy. I do admit the paywall is annoying, but I just choke up too. This is academia. Unless you have a university account, most of the scholarly articles are beyond paywalls. Yeah, I mean, like I say, the university system itself is an invalid institution, right? That they are capitulated by capital as well. Elon Musk buys Twitter shares, and now Trumpers are raving they're back. I mean, like, Elon Musk actually, it's not that he bought Twitter shares, it's that he bought the majority of Twitter shares. So he's like a fairly major investor now, right, in Twitter. So it's just like, what a faff. What a fucking faff. Oh, I wanted to point this one out. Carbon capture, right? There's so much to do going on about carbon capture. This article does a really good job of shitting on that, which I love, because the carbon capture idea, in my view, is like as stupid as it gets. Hey, you know those things outside that are everywhere in nature called trees? Yeah, you know trees, right? Yeah, you know that thing that they do where they capture carbon and store them? Well, instead of planting a whole bunch of trees, instead of going out and planting millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of trees, we should clear cut the trees that we do have, and then we should use the energy that we generate clear cutting those trees to build a facility that does what they do in the first place, but much worse. Carbon capture. Like, we're so fucking stupid. Like, if you want any evidence that the system is fraudulent, it's carbon capture. Carbon capture barely reducing emissions despite billions in subsidies, report, because it's about transferring wealth from the poor to the rich. That's as simple as that. Carbon capture only serves to prolong our dependence on fossil fuels. It's a greenwashing strategy being used by the oil and gas sector to delay the energy transition. A study published last week by the nonprofit group Environmental Defense finds that Canada's heavily subsidized carbon capture, utilization, and storage projects are sequestering just 0.05% of this country's greenhouse gas emissions. The study, titled Buyer Beware, Fossil Fuel Subsidies and Carbon Capture Fairy Tales in Canada, suggests carbon capture efforts have woefully underperformed despite both the federal government and fossil fuel industry claiming the technology is an important tool in the fight against climate change. We should lock these guys up. Like, we should incarcerate these guys. This is obviously theft. Like, it's an overt and obvious theft, right? How do we get people to give us free money for nothing? I know! We'll tell them we'll build a facility that'll do the things trees do, but worse. ED estimates only 3.55 megatons of carbon is being captured per year, most of which is used to enhance oil production. For comparison, the report notes, emissions from Canada's oil and gas industry were 191 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent in 2019. Since 2000, CCUS projects have received $5.8 billion in theft from the federal government, as well as the governments of Alberta and Saskatchewan. Here's a new thing that we should start doing. Instead of saying the word subsidies, we should say the word theft. In addition to this, ED reports that in 2021, the Trudeau government handed the fossil fuel sector a total of $8.6 billion in public theft. Although this amount is less than half of the 2020 sum, which was estimated at $18 billion, the 2021 figure is nonetheless a substantial use of taxpayer money that went towards making it cheaper to find, extract, process, transport, and export fossil fuels, the report notes. The continued use of public money to subsidize the oil, I can't say theft there, to theft the oil and gas sector. What word should I use there? The continued use of public money to prop up the oil and gas sector remains at odds with the Liberal government's stated climate goals. Of course it does. They're fucking grifters. Which were reasserted as part of the Confidence of Supply Agreement with the NDP announcement on March 23rd. Among other pledges, the Trudeau government committed to the agreement to make significant emissions reductions by 2030 and to achieve a net zero emissions goal by 2050. The agreement also promised to phase out public financing of the fossil fuel sector, with early moves promised for this year. As CBC reported last week, meeting the 2030 climate goals requires that Canada's oil patch, the single largest source of emissions in Canada, slash production by 40% over the next 8 years. Yeah, that's cute. Like, that's never going to happen. The federal government's emissions reduction plan is short on details as how this might be accomplished, CBC noted. Ed pointed out that between 2018 and 2020, the Trudeau government provided 14 times more funding to the fossil fuel sector than it did financing renewables. The level of ambition reflected in this plan continues to fall short, said Julia Levin, ED's senior climate and energy program manager, in a statement. Most importantly, this plan allows for oil and gas production to rise, when avoiding catastrophic climate change requires winding down production of oil and gas over the next decade. Critics have already pointed out that Trudeau's plan includes no new regulations that would help achieve its significant emissions target on such short timelines. The government announced last week it plans to roll out a substantial investment tax credit for carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology, although no concrete details were revealed. Aside from this incentive, it appears Trudeau is hoping the fossil fuel sector will reinvest new profits into CCUS technology and other methods of emission reduction of their own accord. I'm going to read that one again, just so that you understand how fucked we are. Aside from this incentive, which is a theft, it appears Trudeau is hoping the fossil fuel sector will reinvest new profits into CCUS technology and other methods of emission reduction of their own accord. The federal government's emissions reduction plan states, Canada's oil and gas industry is currently generating record cash flow. If deployed strategically, these funds could enhance carbon competitiveness and enable the sector to do its fair share in contributing to the country's climate goals. This is like asking a psychopath to not be a psychopath. This is like looking at Jason Voorhees, drenched in blood, surrounded by dead bodies, while he's holding a machete, staring directly at you, and saying, maybe he's friendly. ED is one of the several prominent organizations, including Greenpeace, challenging CCUS's effectiveness as a tool in the fight against climate change. Okay, buddy. You want to come on?
Yes, you do.
I know, buddy. Climate change. ED's analysis indicates that 70% of the carbon captured in Canada is used for enhanced oil recovery. Oh, I know, buddy. I know. Which in turn increases oil production. In other words, carbon is being captured to recover more oil, which then leads to more emissions. The government's plan relies heavily on carbon capture, ignoring advice from expert scientists who warn against reliance on the unproven technology, said Levin. So remember how the comet was coming towards Earth in the movie Don't Look Up, right? So what we're doing is we're putting all our chips in with this unproven technology, while the psychopath that fucking owns the technology is like, no, everything's fine. And in the meantime, he's created an escape hatch for himself while we get fucking destroyed by a comet. Carbon capture only serves to prolong our dependence on fossil fuel. It's a greenwashing strategy being used by the oil and gas sector to delay the energy transition. It's not a climate solution. Ed's report adds that during Trudeau's first term as Prime Minister, his government provided $100 billion to the fossil fuel sector, raising the government's subsidies by 40%. And constituting the second largest increase among G20 countries. Between 2018 and 2020, Canada provided more public financing to oil and gas companies than any other G20 country. The ED report also indicates that it would cost approximately $8 billion per year until 2050 to bring solar and wind energy production up to the levels required to fully decarbonize electricity generation in Canada. A necessary step to meet the Trudeau government's emissions reduction goals. However, in 2021, the government committed less than $1 billion over 4 years for renewable energy and grid modernization products. The report also examined the consequences of generous exemptions on carbon pricing permitted under Canada's current scheme, one that has essentially allowed the entire oil and gas sector off the hook for their emissions, with between 80 and 90% of their emissions considered exempt. Had Suncor, the Canadian oil and gas industry's largest emitter, paid what ordinary Canadians are expected to pay for carbon in 2020, the company would have contributed $830 million. Ed's analysis concluded that Suncor paid just $59 million, meaning taxpayers provided the company with a $771 million public subsidy. Taylor C. Noakes is an independent journalist and public historian from Montreal. These people are psychopaths. These people are psychopaths. I don't know what needs to be said. I don't know what needs to be said. Literally, instead of saying, oh, this is a existential crisis that's going to destroy the species, we should move away from it and attempt to continue making money without destroying the species, they have said, destroying the species is fine. Right? I'm going to be dead soon anyway. I don't give a shit about them. Right? These people are psychopaths. To a man. To a man. If you find out that someone is working on the oil rig, fuck that person. I don't give a fuck anymore. I don't care. I don't give a shit about this. But the jobs. Get fucked. I don't care. I genuinely do not care. Get fucked for contributing to this disaster. You are at best a toady. You know the movie, you know the show Care Bears, right? There's no heart, right? Remember he has a little pathetic sidekick named Beastie or Beastor or something, whatever his stupid name is, right? That's you. Stop pretending. Stop pretending like you're anything other than this moronic psychopath trying to destroy the species. For fuck's sake. And 30% of the society is voting for this. 30% of the society votes for literally the destruction of the species, right? That's the Conservative Party. Another 30% votes for a party that's saying, we don't want to destroy the species, but does. So they're gullible, right? So we've got evil psychopaths on one side. We've got, and then we've got, literal gullible rubes, and then the rest of the 40% of the populace is so crushed and disorganized and scattered into the wind that even if they wanted to organize in order to fight back against this, they literally don't have the financial footing to even get food and shelter for themselves. Welcome to Canada. Everyone hates us, and for good reason. We have gone full-blown psychotic. We are delusional. We are psychotic, and it's not going to get better. It's not going to get better. I'm not seeing anything that's indicating Canadians are going to have a come to Jesus wake up moment, right? we're going to blow this place up. That's what we're trying to do, right? Now we're rounding up and eliminating Russian through sanctions. Sanctions is war. It is social murder against the people of a nation that are targeted. It's a slow, terrifying death as families die. I mean, all that the sanctions that we're trying to do against Russia are doing is chasing them into the hands of the Chinese. That's all it's doing, right? That the Russians, like, they're taking these sanctions, and for example, like McDonald's leaves Russia. And you know what Russia did? They took all of those properties, they converted them to something else, and they kept them open. Why shouldn't they? Like, this capitalist grift that says, like, oh, if you do this stuff, then we'll leave. Like, the response is great. I can't wait. Life will be so much better if you just fucking get out of here, you psychos. Like, I'm a communist. Like, that's not a threat. Like, I want you to leave. Life will be better without you. You're a parasite. Like, get out of here. I don't understand why these guys, like, I mean, I understand why they think they're important because they're narcissistic psychos, but, like, the idea that the general populace is like, oh yeah, that capitalist said that if we raise taxes on him by 0.01%, he's gonna leave, and that's a problem, and so we gotta do what he says. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, if the capitalists leave, then we take the means of production, because they've left, right? They're gone. So we take the means of production, because they didn't take the factory with them, right? And then we run it. Seems like a concession to me. Like, seems like total victory to me. Like, I don't know how you could interpret it any other way than a complete and total victory for us. That this psychopathic, parasitic grifter is running out of town, and we are left to organize the society without him. Sounds like the end of, like, a movie where the protagonists win. Like, celebrate. We got rid of these psychos. I don't know how you could interpret it any other way. Animal abuse alert, Pug being tortured on camera. Or he's being overly dramatic. He's overly dramatic. Aren't you the most overly dramatic little guy? Yes, you are. You're a little overly dramatic little guy. You're such a little queen, aren't you? Yes, you are, my precious little guy. If you ask the billionaires nicely to play nice, they will. What a joke. Yeah, exactly. I'm with you. Fossil fuels are bringing about mass extinction. Humans are one species out of millions that will become extinct. Yeah. And, like, it's not like the Earth isn't giving us lots of opportunities, right? And, like, here's what's so embarrassing about this, Jinho, right? Is that, well, here. Yeah. Yeah. You're not going to get this kind of content from other streamers. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm grown? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet. When death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet, I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? When everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice. Antarctica is covered in ice. And I still believe that we can do it. I still believe, even now, that we can do it. Because the solution is so stupidly easy. It's so simple. We don't need to make a carbon capture technology. We don't need to create anything. We don't need to create wind energy or nuclear energy or any of this kind of shit. We don't need to do anything at all. This place was a garden before we got here. It was made as a garden before we were even conscious of it. We spawned into a garden. That we are burning down. So that we can, play with superpowers and shit? So that we can throw garbage into bins? So that we can do what? For what purpose? That the earth is far more capable to heal itself, thank you very much. It created this. It created us. It's more than capable of healing itself, thank you very much. And if we want to be here to witness the absolute miracle of the earth healing itself, all we have to do is stop. And at this point, with who's running this place, what we have to do is surround the halls of power. we have to stop participating. That the first thing that a society should do if it wants to prevent a disaster is to stop participating in the disaster. Thank you, Jinho. Thank you, Harry. I appreciate it. I consider myself very blessed to have you people with me today. And generally, to have you all with me. That you are in the chat and I am here, and I know that we're separated by great distances, and I know that our connection exists within the abstract. But I remember when I was younger going through the Iraq War, 9/11, all of that, and I knew at that time that it was total bullshit. And I don't mean in a 9/11 truther way. I mean that we were being lied into a war in Iraq, and I knew it. And no one around me believed me. And it was hard to go through that. And now we're going through similar things with the level of delusion that we're at now. And it really does help me that we're coming together in solidarity with one another, to live together in solidarity with one another, so that we're not isolated, so that we're not alone. And as we go through this absolute absurd reality, hopefully that brings a little bit of comfort to you. Just a little bit of comfort to you. Oh, Rob, you're describing the NAFTA. Like, they didn't take the factory, but they stripped all the equipment and raw materials, shipped them abroad, blocked us from getting materials we needed to resume production. Yeah. I mean, that's what happened during NAFTA, right? Because the political class was on board with it. I'm gonna play. I'm gonna play another one. This is probably my This is probably my best tune. Like, if I become internationally famous for my music, this will be the tune that does it, I think. The wage they pay me with don't get me very far. The chains that hold me break me down, but they don't scar. Can't even drink away my blues inside a bar. And this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up, and this year sucks. Another day won't help that pain inside your back. The days get harder, but it's too hard to keep track. They keep you tired so your soul doesn't open a crack. And God don't care what monkeys think about the facts. And this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up? And this year sucks. So sit atop your pile of bones and bloody gold, and human sacrifice don't stop you being old. At least you'll die the bomb you said explode. We're gonna burn to death while doing what we're told. And this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up? And this year sucks. It burns down anyway. It burns down anyway. It burns down anyway. It burns down anyway. Yeah! Fuck these guys, man. Fuck these guys so hard. Like, all these guys, they should go to jail, right? Like, they should go to prison forever, at bare minimum. Like, all of the fossil fuel executives, all of their fucking surrogates, the entire Liberal Party, the entire Conservative Party, all of these guys should go to The Hague and be hung for their crimes. Like, obviously. And at this stage in the game, if that's not your position, you're either evil or delusional. Like, literally, you're looking at, like, a Jason Voorhees-style psychopath and basically just saying, yeah, that's fine. In fact, I think I'm going to vote for that guy. Like, that's where we're at right now. And near as I can tell, the population loves it. Like, near as I can tell, the population loves it. They're just like, yeah, I can't wait to vote for Jason Voorhees. Right? I can't wait to vote for this overt, crazed psychopath who's completely betraying my children. I can't wait for it. Like, yikes. Well, welcome to Canada, man. Like, welcome to fucking Canada. Like, we are a deluded, psychopathic people. Who our entire culture needs to just be washed away. Like, we need to be, like, Canada needs to just, like, give all the land back to the First Nations people. Just stop pretending like what we're building is a culture, cause it's fucking not. Like, cause it's just fucking not. Ugh. What's annoying right now, what's happening in Toronto, is you can find open mic nights for comedy, but there's no open mic nights that I have found for music. Right? There's just nothing. Yeah, I mean, it's the question of whether or not the death penalty is appropriate. I understand, Eric. Like, that's fine. Like, it's I think that it is completely reasonable. Like, if Hitler made it to The Hague, I would have been like, yeah. Like, yeah, hang that guy. Right? That's fine. Like, there is such a thing as a psychopath. There just is. Like, this, and like, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying we should enact the death penalty for citizens, right? Although even then, like, I mean, I've watched documentaries where there are, like, literally unrepentant psychopaths sitting in a cell being like, yeah, and then I ate his brain because I wanted to. It actually tastes really good, yeah. Like, they're, like, psychopaths exist. Like, they're real. And we just kind of pretend like they're not. But I mean, but again, I respect your position. Like, this is one of these positions that I'm not going to die on this hill. Like, I'm not going to draw a line in the sand over it. But I just, like, somebody like George Bush, for example, like, he's killed 1 million people. Like, he's responsible for the death of 1 million people. Like, that's pretty impressive, right? Like, that's serial killer shit right there. Like, and we just pretend like it didn't happen. Like, it's my favorite. We're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, fucking, Bush gets to go on like Ellen and shit. Like, get the fuck right out of here. Get the fuck right out of here. So let's take a small pivot, if you will. So this comes from where is this coming from? Yeah, Better Dwelling. Better Dwelling has been owning, by the way, on the in the conversation of housing, right? Ontario residential real estate owned by investors. Okay, so this takes a little bit of deciphering this graph. So Ontario residential real estate owned by investors. The light blue line, right? The one at the bottom here, and this is organized by location. So Toronto, Collingwood, Woodstock, Barrie, right? The light blue line is total. So all of the housing that exists in the area. The hard blue line that you're seeing above that is the new construction. So there's new construction being done, so it's not available yet, but that is owned by investors. And then the total amount that is owned by investors. So if we take a look at Toronto, where I live, right? So the light blue line is just shy of this, which is 20%. So 20% of the housing in Toronto is owned by investors. And let's be really clear what that means. That means that there are empty properties sitting over there doing absolutely nothing whatsoever. 1 out of every 5 house that exists in Toronto is empty, sitting in a corner, storing someone's wealth. The new construction, just shy, 40%. So of the new housing that's being built, 40% of it is going to sit in the corner and it's not going to do anything. That's what it's designated to do. That's what it's for. Right? You take a look at a place like Hawkesbury, the ownership there, 30%. 60% of the new construction is for this worthless endeavor of storing capital. Like, it is getting to the point now where we can say very clearly that the capitalist class is a negative draw on the society. Right? Because if you, like, remember, that's the 20% line, right? So most places meet 20%, right? Most places. 1 of 5. I wonder what's happening to the housing market. I wonder what's going on in the housing market. Like, what's going on in the housing market? It's being bought. Like, play one game of Monopoly. You can find out pretty quickly what's happening in the housing market. And again, I've got to say it over and over again. Like, these people are not interested in turning around and renting these places. That's not what it's for. To them, that's just a hassle. Right? The air you breathe will be next. Of course, Tinker. Yeah, absolutely. No, if they could meter the air, they'd absolutely do it. If they could meter the air, they absolutely would do it. And this is what they're doing across the globe. Saw a video of Chris Edge about this subject. It's only 5-minute long. I would like you to comment of what you think on how a revolution, but through a peaceful method. I mean, I am of the opinion, Eric. I know that we just had a conversation about the death penalty, but hey, Loaf, how you doing, bud? We have to do a peaceful revolution. We have to. There's no other alternative. And I don't mean, and let me be very specific about what I mean about this, that if we attempt a violent revolution, it fails even if we win. So let's say we manage to cobble enough people together to overthrow the government violently. And we storm Ottawa, and we go in there and we take it over, right? January 6th, but it works, right? And we start, passing legislation and edicts and all this kind of stuff. What? You think fucking Alberta's going along with this? You think British Columbia is just going to go along with it? You think the Manitoba, Saskatchewan, you think these places are going to go along with it? The East Coast? Like, what provinces are going to go along with it? Like, when you see, like when you see violent revolutions of the past occurs in Soviet Union, they're literally throwing off, like, Tsars, like literal monarchs, right? So that has more of a consensus opinion. But our country is so, like, we are so separated from one another. Like, we are so, there isn't a consensus that we have been torn apart in huge ways, right? There are major disagreements about, like, and really basic disagreements, like, should people have food and shelter, right? Like, there are places in Canada where the answer is no. Like, no, people should not have food and shelter. Like, if you can't prove to a capitalist that you deserve food and shelter, then you get to starve. Well, that's pretty basic libertarianism, right? So, like, Alberta, like, I've seen people say in debates that, yeah, if you can't show that you're worth a damn, right? If you can't prove to the capitalist class that you deserve to live, then you should starve, right? Like, libertarianism is rife with this kind of psychopathic. There's a reason why it's, like, directly beside Nazis, right? Like, my first message didn't get through. I don't think that interpretation is quite right. I mean, screw landlords. There you go. But investors rent out property, so it's not as high as 1/5 sitting empty. Dude, no, fuck these guys. Like, fuck all of them. Get the fuck. Get like, landlords. Fuck this whole thing. Like, and let's be really clear. There's a major difference between, like, your grandma renting out her basement and a guy who owns 30,000 houses. Like, this whole thing needs to get fucked completely. Like, and what's so embarrassing is that it would be easy. Like, it would be really easy to fuck this system up. Like literally, you could do it in a day. Just, like, open up a wicket out of Service Canada, let people come in and say, hey, I don't have a house. And you go, like, okay, cool. I'll take one of the houses from the guy that has 30,000 houses and give it to you. John, won't that collapse the market? Yeah, that's right. Correct. Well, then I'll just leave. Bye. Like, do us the favor. Get out of here. Yeah, if you don't live in it, you shouldn't own it. I mean, like, the idea that housing should be a commodity in the first place is abhorrent. Like, it's grotesque. Housing deserves to be, like, housing is for the living. I'm just saying it's less than 1/5 sitting empty. I absolutely agree we should expropriate the shit out of this house. I'd like to see this data, actually, Love. Like, I'm not trying to contradict you or anything. Like, I don't want to start an argument. I'm just saying, like, I would be interested in seeing this particular data. Like, how many of these houses actually are sitting empty, right? Like, we know for a fact that 1/5 have been co-opted by these investors, right? This worthless class of parasites. But to what degree are they just hoarding it? And we know that there's a good amount of this. Like, we know. But what we don't know is, like, how much is being rented, how much is actually sitting empty. Like, there's a place right over here. Like, the place right beside mine has been empty now for 6 months. And it's just like, why? Like, that's a good unit. Like, why? I see where you're coming from, but I still think it's worth a watch because he describes how to get organized. I'm worried about playing videos like that, Eric, because they demonetize my shit. Like, that's what it comes down to. And I just can't afford to show that stuff on stream. Sorry. I know that's shitty, but that's YouTube's model. Oh yeah, and oh yeah, man. And this kind of stuff is hilarious. Federal budget to include ban on foreign home buyers, billions for housing. So, housing affordability is going to be a main feature of tomorrow's federal budget. But, like, the whole thing is about foreign buyers. So it's all tied up in this the problem is foreigners narrative. right? We've heard that before, right? Oh, the problem is foreign buyers. It's foreigners. Certainly has nothing to do with the exactly billions for housing for billionaires to buy up, which, like, we know that's the case. Like, and my favorite is when they say, oh, we're going to give money to first-time buyers, right? We're going to give money to first-time buyers. It'll be like $40,000 for first-time buyers. I'm like, great, then the housing market will go up by $40,000. Like, that's what'll happen. Like, that's what we were always told about the basic income, right? Oh, if you give everybody $2,000 a month, then the rent will go up to $2,000 a month. Just a full-scale admission that the system is broken and co-opted. But they would say it with no trace of irony whatsoever. But if you give $40,000 to home buyers, then, oh yeah, housing won't just go up $40,000, right? Yeah, most of the speculation buying is Canadian. Of course it is. Well, and also, like, you can't prevent it, right? If I'm a foreign buyer and I want to buy property in Canada, then I just create a shell corporation, right? I just create like and that's not foreign, right? And then the shell corporation, which is internal and Canadian, buys the property. So this is outright like nationalist bullshit. Like, that's what it is. It's so that the nationalists can be like, yeah, get those foreigners out of here. That's the problem. There's too many Chinese buying properties. That's the problem. Okay, buddy. Thanks, buddy. Meanwhile, here in Ontario, I know, buddy. I know. Foreign buyers. Milo's very racist. No, I'm kidding you. But Ontario's fiscal watchdog finds Ontario's total program spending in 2020 was the lowest in the country. The FAO says health spending per person in Ontario was $4,800 in 2020, the lowest in Canada, and $536 below the average of other provinces. And what's deeply annoying about this kind of thing is that Doug Ford's going to get in again, right? Like, the opposition is so weak and so incapable of actually forming any kind of cohesive and cogent idea or plan that Ford's going to get in again. Like, it's absolutely shameful. Russian stocks shrug off sanctions. Ruble steady. Just in case. Somebody said earlier that, like, oh, they're putting sanctions on. Yeah. Like, it doesn't seem to matter. Like, this kind of thing is actually very damning for American hegemony, right? That they expect sanctions to do what they did to Venezuela, right? They put sanctions on Venezuela and it destroyed their economy, right? And so they sort of hoped the same thing would happen to Russia, but it didn't at all. And in fact, like, Russia, China, India, like, these guys are starting to form up. Right? They're starting to look at one another and be like, oh, we literally don't need these guys. Like, these guys are unimportant. And we're doing everything we can to convince them that that's the truth. Under free trade systems, capital isn't limited by borders and labels of foreign. Only labor gets those limitations, exactly. Pay no attention to the Canadian oligarchs and corporations who have foreign investors while we announce window dressing legislation. Exactly. Pretend like you're doing something. Reporter asks Psaki why not send U.S. troops into Ukraine after atrocities committed by Russia. So, first of all, like, the bloodthirsty nature of the media, right? Jen Psaki's saying straight out, we're not going to invade Ukraine, right? I think that the president's objective is, and his responsibility is, to make decisions that are in the interest of the United States and the national security of the United States and the American people, and not to go to war with Russia. It's to do everything in our power to hold them accountable, to support efforts through international systems, to do exactly that, and to provide military assistance, security assistance, and support the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government. That's exactly what we're doing. But it is not in our interests or in the interests of the American people for us to be in a war with Russia. So that's an important moment, right? Because first of all, it shows you the bloodthirsty nature of the media, that the media is like salivating for a war. But it also shows you that there are hard lines, right, for the ruling class of America. Like, they're not going to go to war with Russia. And that likely means that what's going on here is just like a matter of time, right? We really are just waiting for the military force here, the Nazis, to get blown up so that there's nobody left. So that if Zelensky says we surrender, there's nobody left fighting. Like, the issue of what's going on in Ukraine is that if Zelensky were to say we surrender, the Nazis would say, fuck that, we're going to keep fighting. Like, that's the truth of it. Like, the military doesn't pay attention to Zelensky. They don't care about him. Like, they're fighting their own fight because they want to. And so we've already had a big surrender happened in Mariupol over the last weekend. They moved troops from Mariupol into this region. And then the move away from Kiev, which left behind it this narrative, the Bucha incident, right? The Bucha massacre is what they're calling it, right? And of course, there's, if you guys don't know, the story of the Bucha massacre is that while the Russians moved out, they opened fire on Ukrainian citizens. And somebody just over here on Genzadong, right? There's a reason why this place has been quarantined. March 31st, Russian forces leave Bucha. April 1st, Bucha's mayor happily announces that the Russian army has gone from the city. Not a word about the corpses. April 2nd, Ukrainian journalists drive and walk around the city. Another one. Not a word about the corpses. Then, Special Forces Regiment Safari begins clearing operation in Bucha from saboteurs and accomplices in Russia, National Police. And only on April 3rd do they finally find corpses in the middle of the central street. Magical. Yeah, American government holding other nations accountable is an unfunny joke. I know, right? Also, a thread on the Bucha incident. This is probably the best thread that I've seen on it because this includes the pictures of the so-called massacre, right? I literally talked to somebody who compared this to the Holocaust. Like, literally, even if you look at these pictures, I think there's 7 bodies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if the Russians kill 7 people in Bucha, it's the same as the Holocaust. Like, yikes. So article appeared in the New York Times, right, using Maxar satellite images and precise data on which the killing took place. March 11th for the incidents with the highest number of victims, and March 20th for the second incident on the same street. During this time, the area, according to public sources, was firmly under Russian control. This is also supported by the fact that some civilian victims were wearing white sleeve bands, which they wear in Russian-controlled areas. Here are the satellite images from Maxar showing that mortar impacts and other damage from shelling came at the same time, right? So the question that is coming out from the skeptics, let's call us, is couldn't this just have been Ukrainian shelling, right? Like, why does this need to be attributed to Russians killing citizens indiscriminately when we're in the middle of a war and there is Ukrainian shelling going on in the region, right? Burned minivan, tree knocked out by explosion, like showing more and more stuff. So the skeptic argument that's coming out, the New York article itself avoids the hard topic of absence of visible gunfire wounds, preferring to state that causes of death are unknown, but vaguely admits the possibility of them being killed by shelling. And to me, the thing that damns this narrative the most is that we actually have like literal footage of like the mayor of Bucha like announcing that the Russians are leaving. He's happy about it, obviously, right? And makes no mention of this, right? Like, if this is such a massacre, if this is such an enormous atrocity, if this is such a horrible event, right? Why doesn't the fucking literal mayor mention it? Why isn't he talking about it? Where's his statement, right? So this is the thing that's been happening. In the midst of this, of course, Scott Ritter has been canceled. He's removed from Twitter. And then on top of that, literally we've got an article here. In a break with the past, U.S. is using intel to fight an info war with Russia, even when the intel isn't rock solid. So literally, they're just outright admitting that we're just going to move forward with false statements and false claims. We don't care. Like, literally, they're saying to your face, in front of you, we don't care if the information is accurate or not, right? So I wanted you guys to be able to get ahead of this Bucha massacre narrative. I don't think it's going to go very far. I think it's going to get like Ghost of Kiev, that people are going to be like, probably not, right? And the other part of that narrative is that, so as the Russians move out of the Kiev region, this is being described as a retreat. When it isn't, it's a real allocation of resources, right? That the military forces such that they exist around Kiev are no longer fighting and no longer interested in fighting. That all they really have to do is prevent supplies from getting in to a degree, like weapons from getting in, right? So they're just moving the bulk of their troops to where the fighting is, right? This is the last of it. Like Mariupol has fallen, Luhansk was taken long ago, and so it's about this conflict on the border of Donetsk, which is the where the whole thing started, right? So like all good stories, they loop back around and end where they start. And what's changed is you. I've never seen this much propaganda or Russophobia in media. Sick thing is the Europeans are doubling down and they have the most to lose. Oh yeah, I am absolutely convinced that there is going to be a wave of political upheaval over this. That like Moscow said to Germany, if you want our gas, you're going to have to pay for it in rubles. And Germany said, no, we're not going to pay for it in rubles. Russia is saying, we're going to shut the pipes off. Germany is saying, we'll just wear sweaters. Like, oh, thanks, Rob. Even a buck helps, bud. I appreciate that. That's nice. If each and every one of you chipped in a buck every night, that would, boy howdy, my rent would get paid in a minute. That'd be wonderful. You guys are great, though. You guys are great. Just let people know I exist, man. Thanks so much, Rob. I appreciate it, bud. I've never seen this much propaganda or Russia. I already read that one. Didn't the mayor call the Russians orcs? Yeah, there's a racial element to this conflict for sure. The people of Iraq have nothing, but at least they have their freedom. Angelina Jolie, American emancipation. Yeah, right. Like, imagine believing that existing under a government installed by an occupying force is freedom. Like, fuck off. Fuck off, Angelina Jolie. Get the fuck out of here. Can only tune in for a minute to spread some bread. Be well, brethren. Thanks, Victini, bud. I appreciate it. Good to see you, bud. I hope you're doing well out there. We have reports that Ukrainian forces are surrendering because they run out of supplies. Yeah, of course. Like, that's the whole strategy now, right? Just cut them off. Right? They run out of bullets, they run out of batteries, they run out of food, they run out of gas. Like, that's it. And once that's over, like, that's what happened in Mariupol. I think a lot of these soldiers came to the realization that, like, okay, it's literally we are talking about waiting to just have Russians kick in the door and gun us down like pigs. Like, that's literally where we're at. And so they just surrendered, right? And the same thing's going to happen over here, right? That, like, this the Ukrainians are out of gas. Like, that's all it comes down to. They're out of gas. That the Russians are connected into their wider economy, which like the Moscow. So like this military front is connected to Moscow. Moscow is literally connected to China, right? Like, and for God's sakes, like China, like Moscow is connected to the EU. They're like the EU itself and the United States itself gives Russia $1 billion a day for their gas. What's Ukraine got like that? Where's the supply chain for Ukraine? So this war, in my view, was actually over when the Russians secured the supply routes. Once the supply chains were broken, that was it. It was just a matter of time. And okay, wait a second. Wartime atrocities in Ukraine are crisis actors like Sandy Hook and Duma gas effect. I'm not making that claim. I want to be very clear. Time out on that, okay? Because that gets into big like conspiracy kind of stuff. I am not making the claim that they placed actors around. What I am making the claim is that the footage that they have could have come from any time at any point, right? So why couldn't they have just taken footage from like a shelling during like a conflict where there were dead bodies, where there were dead people, and then just presented it as if it was the massacre, right? Like, to me, that's the most likely part. I don't think crisis actors and all that, like, why bother with any of that, right? Like, we've got a picture of dead bodies on the street. Let's just put it on the table and say the Russians killed those guys while walking out the door. That's essentially the claim, right? And it would be easy to do, be very simple. And so a thread like this is simply pointing out, like, wait a minute, there are other explanations for why these bodies would be here, right? First of all, like, there's no gunfire, like there's no bullet wounds on any of the bodies, right? There is signs of shelling though. There is signs of explosions and the like. So couldn't this have happened during a shelling, right? Couldn't this have occurred during that period of time, right? And to me, the most damning part about it is just that there's no official in Bucha, the mayor of Bucha himself. Like, nobody's mentioning it or talking about it. Nobody was like, the Russians killed us on the way out. Like, we don't have any of that. Like, literally, we've got the mayor of Bucha holding up a selfie camera going, the Russians have left, and oh, it's nice to be able to organize ourselves. Okay, well, let's pick ourselves up. Everybody have a nice day, right? Like, he's not saying, like, the Russians left, and while they left, they killed 100 of us in firefight. Like, none of that's happening. So, like, which you would expect to see, you know? So I think the narrative that I think is most believable is that there's just, well, I'd like to see it. That's, tell me what to look at. I'd like to see it. Because right now, and I mean, for God's sakes, like, the Pentagon, right? The Pentagon can't independently confirm atrocities in Ukraine's Bucha. So, like, okay, what source do you have that's better than the Pentagon? Because the Pentagon says it can't confirm it. So I'd like to see the source that confirms it for you. Like, not trying to be confrontational. I'm just saying, like, I haven't seen anything convincing. Like, what's to stop them from just taking a photo of a conflict that happened 2 weeks ago, right? Like, they've had satellites in the air for this entire time. So what's to stop them from taking photos from 2 weeks ago and just being like, this happened 2 weeks ago during the fighting that happened, but it happened when the Russians left. Like, I think that that's a very credible skepticism to have, given the circumstance. And one that is lent a lot of credibility, given the Pentagon's own inability to confirm the atrocities in Ukraine's Bucha. So, again, though, like, I can have my mind changed, right? I'm open to it, but I'd like to know what the evidence is. That's been the thing that's kind of shocked me the most, is that, like, it's all I've seen outside of these pictures right here is just people being like, I've seen atrocities in Bucha that the Russians did, and it's horrible, and we should do a thing. And, like, you literally have journalists asking asking Jen Psaki, hey, should we invade Russia over this? And she's having to say to the bloodthirsty military, or the bloodthirsty media, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Right? Which is why I think this narrative is going to run out of gas, by the way. Shocking drone footage shows Ukrainian civilians shot by Russians. Is this something like, okay. It's just, I'm sure that they're trying to promulgate this, so if I type this in, it's probably going to find something. From the Sun? Okay, let's take a look at what the Sun has to say. Amateur drone enthusiasts. Nothing. Okay, there's some... Tanks. Oh, we got some fire happening there. What are they shooting at? Like, I know I just skipped ahead there, but this is often the case with this kind of stuff. It's like, so they're looking at a house. Like, as is often the case with this kind of footage, and it's the reason why I don't show a lot of this footage on shows like, on stuff like this, is like, we don't know what's happening, right? Like, we literally don't know what's happening in this circumstance. So it's like we assume that the person is a civilian. We assume that, and in some cases, like we assume that the transport or the truck that we're looking at is Russian when it isn't. That it ends up being Ukrainian. Like in the early days, there was that one video of a tank ran over a car, and everybody was like, "The Russians ran over a car! Oh my god!" And it turns out it was actually a Ukrainian that ran over the car. So that story fell away right away, right? Like just because it's labeled Russian Z tank fires at civilian cyclists doesn't mean anything, right? Like, that's just the label they've put on it. And what, it's coming from the sun? So I think we have every reason to be skeptical of this story. Like, Tesla man Rodder net? What's going on over there, Victini? What's happening, bud? Like like these guys have lied about a fucking genocide in China. Like the Uyghur genocide narrative is so fucking fake. And like, so they've lied about China killing 8 million people, right? Like, of course they're going to lie about like 7 people shot in a street. Right? Of course they're going to tell these lies about like, so we've got a tank shooting. What's he shooting at even? Like we literally don't know who he's even shooting at, what the circumstances are, what like maybe he's under fire right now, right? Like, we don't know. Like, is he shooting at a civilian? Is he like, who's he even shooting at? It's just claimed that Russian Z-tank fires at a civilian cyclist. Okay, where's the cyclist even? Like, I just like, so unconvincing. Like, I am completely unconvinced by that. What do we got? Shocking drone footage shows devastation of war on Mariupol. Yeah, this is legit. Like, this is showing crazy warfare here. Suspected war crimes in Ukraine drone video. Okay.
Die Schnellstraße E4.
Okay, we don't need that. Okay. Again, like, let's start from the basics, right? We don't know what's going on, right? And moreover, like, we have no reason to believe what anybody thinks or says about any of this stuff. All we have is the footage that we're seeing. So, the footage that we're seeing, I don't know anything. Who is this person? Why are they there? Like, is this a literal Nazi? I don't know anything about them. Right? So I don't know anything about the circumstance. I don't know anything about what I'm seeing. Right? And I don't believe what I'm told, certainly. Like, I'm at 0. So this guy, he's, okay. This guy got out of his car, put up his hands, fell down, clearly shot. By who? Who is this guy even? Is this Russian or Ukrainian even? Like, I have no idea. Like, what side is this guy on? Like, so they're Russian, let's say. Okay. And so now we've moved on to something else.
In einem Kiewer Keller.
Yeah, and this kind of goes into, so like this footage, I'm like is this person a fucking Nazi? Like I know literally nothing about the circumstance. I don't know who this person is. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. Right? And like honestly, even if it is the circumstance that like Russian troops shoot a civilian, it's, I mean, I believe very much that is possible to happen on accident. Like there are accidental deaths by our own police force that happens all the time during peacetime, right? Like we're constantly killing people on accident. Like the Russians are too, for sure. Like for sure that's happening. Like for sure that's happening. But like this elevation into the idea that the Russians are going in there and rounding people up and shooting them on purpose. Like, and even this video that I saw, like, I mean, it's very believable to me. Like, there's so many different narratives that you could put on this. Like, it's believable to me that, like, a Russian soldier could be like, I thought he had a gun in his hand. I thought he was pointing a gun at me. How many times have we heard our own police say that? Right? Like, when they've been holding on to, like, a ketchup bottle or something. Right? So, again, like, it's war, baby. Like, it's war. Like, it's shitty. It's terrible. It's awful. But I'm unconvinced. Like, to elevate this into the level of, like, war crimes, right? There's got to be, like, some kind of motive. There's got to be some kind of narrative that comes out of the Russians who are like, yeah, let's fuck these Ukrainians up, right? And you can't keep that shit secret. Like, every single time there's, like, an atrocity regime or something like this, they're very open about it. Like, there's no such thing as, like, a secret genocide. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. Like, when it happens, it's very... This, like, are you talking about this particular footage that we're seeing right here? Or do you, like, it's an act of nationalist aggression? Like, are you talking about the war generally? I just want to know what footing that we're getting ourselves into. Like, specificity matters to me a lot. A lot. Or, like, war is acceptable. I mean, no. Wars of aggression are obviously not acceptable. So the question comes into, what is this war? Like, what is happening with this? And I don't know if you've actually heard my position on this, Victini. So, like, the history, near as I can tell, is this. In 2014, there was a coup in Kiev, backed by NATO. NATO funded neo-Nazis in order to coup the government of Ukraine. We not only have the State Department planning it on record, we literally have the Nazis confessing to it on footage. I even made a video about it. They then, after the coup occurred, right, the Nazis then went to the Donbass region and started shelling the cities of Luhansk and Donetsk. We've got footage of them firing from a helicopter, firing rockets at the airport. We've got huge shelling going on, right? But there is a circumstance in which engaging in war is acceptable, which is if you're defending yourself, right? Like, if you're defending yourself from a literal aggressor. So we've got Nazis. They're in the Donbass region. They're shelling Ukrainians. They're shelling Russians. Right? There are Russians that live here, right? Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union. It was part of the Soviet Union for longer than it's been independent, right? And you've got you've got Nazis in a post-coup Ukraine shelling Russians on the border of Russia. That is happening. Like, that's the Donbass War. You can go on YouTube and you can type in Donbass War documentary, and a bunch of documentaries will come up, tell you all about it. They removed the most powerful ones, which was the RT documentaries, but the French documentary is still very good. The German documentary is very good. Try and find the Oliver Stone documentary, which they've scrubbed from the internet, but Oliver Stone did a documentary on it, which was very good. And so when Putin moves into Crimea, right after the coup happened, the Crimean citizens are overwhelmingly in support of this because they don't want to be part of a system where the government is being couped by Nazis, right? And they know that that's what's happened. And they don't want to end up like Donetsk and Luhansk, where the Nazis come over and start shelling and bombing them, right? Like this is what's happening in Ukraine. Like this is my position. These atrocities are not NATO's fault. Responsibility for aggression and atrocity lies solely with the invading force. Okay, so what's Putin supposed to have done? So he's got Nazis, NATO-backed Nazis, right? Like this is just the truth of it. He's got NATO-backed Nazis shelling Russians. You can't defend yourself with. I mean, no one's arguing that war is good, dude. Like no one is arguing that war isn't hell. Like it's obviously hell. Like pretty clearly. We've got actually a lot of polling data from the Russian military itself, and the opinion of the Russian military is that they're not a big fan of this. Like, they're not going in there being, you believe that footage, but not this footage? I mean, what footage are you talking about? Are you talking about this? Like, I know nothing about this, dude. Like, what is this? Right? Like, and yes, I believe documentarians who go in and have interviews and do conversations, right? Like, yes. I believe I believe the historical documentation, right? And the credibility of journalists, yes. Like and I'm telling you the narrative, right? And I'm asking a very clear question. And it's always interesting to me that anytime I'm challenged on this, the people doing the challenges can't come up with an answer because it's a puzzle, right? So the issue, like the pieces of the puzzle, or that a post-coup Ukraine, which was couped by the Nazis, right? You can type in Azov Battalion, right? Into, you type in Azov Battalion, Azov, and I mean, for God's sakes, you can go to their website, but Azov Battalion, Wikipedia. Right? These are a neo-Nazi regiment, right? They became part of the Ukrainian government. Right? You could literally go to their Wikipedia and read all about them. That's absolutely the truth, Victini, which is why specificity matters so much, and which is why it's so important for us to be thorough, and why it's so important to use source documentation, source interviews, like get it from the source. Like I don't like CNN, Fox, like all these guys. I don't believe them. Like, I seriously don't. That, like, we need sources. And the only time I'll tolerate a source, like, so, for example, Reuters here, right? They're reporting, but they're reporting from a source. And we know who the source is, right? We got a Pentagon official. So that, like, makes this article acceptable to me. But for the most part, I just don't listen. So the Putin has Nazis also narrative. Okay. Who? Like, the Azov Battalion is a regiment, a regime, like a regiment of open neo-Nazis. Again, I suggest you go watch these documentaries. You can see that they're highly organized and they're highly public. You can watch them hold parades. You can watch them hold rallies. You can watch them, like, literally Nazi rallies, right? Like, put in your head the image of, like, the Nazi rallies that you've seen in our own media and throughout footage and all that kind of stuff. And the Azov Battalion is doing the same thing, right? Very openly, everybody knows about them, right? Not new at all, okay? So, and this open regiment, this open Nazi regiment, is part of the Ukrainian military. Like, they have been adopted by the Ukrainian military. They are in government, right? So Putin has Nazis also. Who are they? And all anybody has been able to show me. There's two things that people have been able to show me. First of all, like, yeah, every military has a Nazi in it. Like, you'll always be able to find, like, a smattering of Nazis, right? Like that, but that's not what we're talking about with Ukraine. Like, We aren't talking about just like a club. We're not talking about like a guy with a swastika. We're not talking about like this sort of like this off on the group fringe. Like we are talking about a regiment. Hey Victini, if I gave you a drink and put some poison in it, would you drink it? Why not? The Nazis themselves, again, I have this footage. You can go see it. The Nazis themselves refute this. That the Nazis themselves said, people say we're so small in number, right? But we're strong in effectiveness. That's what they say, right? That they admit, yeah, we're small in number, but we're very influential in terms of our power and in terms of what we can accomplish. They literally say, the direct quote about the coup, the 2014 coup, is if it hadn't been for us, the Euromaidan would have turned into a gay pride parade. Like, that's literally what they said. And so just because they're small doesn't mean they're not effective. Doesn't mean they believe Russia doesn't do the same is... Sorry, Victor, I don't know if I understand your statement. Sorry, bud. I think there's just the belief Russia doesn't do the same is odd. Is that what you're saying? So, sorry, bud. I don't want to say something thinking you're saying one thing when you mean another. Like I worry that this has happened. This is what I think has happened right here. And I don't want to move forward without understanding what you're saying. Because it's this conversation is so delicate. This is such a delicate conversation. How large is the Azov battalion? There have been reports that I've seen, and this is the problem with this situation. I've seen credible reports saying that it is as small as 900, but as large as 20,000. And I've seen reports on all sides of that. So the answer is between 900 and 20,000. And then also, yeah, Major is pointing something out interesting as well, which is that the infusion of to what degree has Nazism actually infused the society, right? The Stepan Bandera movement is actually quite potent. The slogan, I'm sure you've heard it, Slava Ukraine, right? Like Slava Ukraine. I'm dead positive you've heard this. That is a Nazi slogan. Right, that's a slogan that comes out of the Stepan Bandera movement, and Stepan Bandera worked with the Nazis. Yeah, it's the right sector C-14, right? So it's not just Azov Battalion. I just point out the Azov Battalion because they're the most obvious. They're very, very obvious. And again, like, my challenge to people who say, like, oh, well, the Russians have Nazis too. It's like, I would like to see evidence. Like I haven't seen anything on this scale. Like this is pretty massive. Like this is pretty massive. Like imagine if the Proud Boys, who just recently outright admitted that they're a Nazi group, imagine they were in the military. A few pictures of a small number of acceptable military Nazis on the internet. I mean, it's not a few pictures, dude. Like, it really isn't. Like, the downplaying of it has got to go away. Like, that's the most important part. Like, Azov Batal, it's like not a few pictures. Like you can find these guys, like, it's not a few pictures. Like, the evidence is overwhelming, right? And I gotta be really, really, really clear about this, right? Like, the evidence is overwhelming. Like, at NBC News, Ukraine has a Nazi problem. Don't confuse patriotism and Nazism, FT. Like the evidence is overwhelming. You know, Eric, I just think it's a tough one for people. Like, people don't want to believe it. I think that's the truth. Like, is that people want to believe they live in a world where the Nazis are defeated and they're not coming back, and they are. Like, that's a tough pill to swallow. And so I respect what Victini's doing. Like, absolutely. Like, question, be skeptical. I'm skeptical. You should be too. Right? But I am here to tell you, like, the evidence about the level of Nazism that exists in Ukraine is fairly overwhelming. Like, the CIA admits it, the state sector admits it, the Pentagon admits it, the Nazis themselves admit it. Yeah, I respect that, Victini. I just want to. I never want people to feel like I'm disrespecting them. Like, this is a tough one. Like, this conversation that we're having here is amongst the most difficult that I've ever had. And so, okay, so this brings us to it, Victini. Like, the problem that Putin has to solve, and it's a problem, okay? There are Nazis, or at least Nazi-adjacent, people in a post-coup government, a government that is openly hostile to Russia, that is literally talking about joining a defensive alliance with an organization, incidentally, that is completely allied against Moscow, that literally wants to destroy Russia. Like, that's its reason for existing. NATO was erected in the Soviet era in order to dismantle the Soviet Union. That's its stated agenda. Once the Soviet Union fell, there was a huge conversation about what the point of NATO is. Why does NATO exist? Why does it exist? What's the point of it? And then there was a moment where Russia was saying, well, can I join NATO? Can we join NATO? Right? Wouldn't that be great? Right? If Russia also joined NATO, and then there'd be this big defensive alliance right here. Right? And I've always said that would have completely been in the interest of the United States. Oh, Russia wants in on NATO, so now this whole thing is like one big defensive alliance? Oh, great. But instead of that, we're going to push Russia out, and Russia's going to join China, right? So we're very, very fucking stupid. But, yeah, the internet has a way of exploding things beyond their reality. That's true, too. That's true, too. That's why I like sources like Russell Bennett and Patrick Lancaster, and because those guys are boots on the ground. If you're not familiar with those names, Russell Bennett is a Texan, an American, who in 2015, after the coup, moved to Donetsk in order to, quote, kill Nazis. Patrick Lancaster is an independent journalist who just posts YouTube videos up. He is embedded with the Russian military as they go along during this war. It's incredibly brave what he's doing. Incredibly brave what he's doing. Russell Bentley. Yeah, Russell Bentley is the guy. Did I not say Russell Bentley? In any case, Russell Bentley. Russell Bentley's eyewitness testimonies and statements are so dangerous that YouTube removed him from the internet. He was censored basically immediately. And I think you're on like a 2-minute lag, Victini. I think you're 2 minutes behind me. So we'll see. Let me know when you hear this. Just type 1 into the chat the moment you hear this. We're gonna see. We are getting to the end of the night, but honestly, dude, like, this is a good conversation to have. So here's the puzzle, okay? And I'm gonna put it on your feet. Thanks, Compton. So we're in a post-coup Ukraine, right? We've got the State Department admitting that, not admitting it was a coup, but we've got them planning the coup. We've got the Nazis saying that there was a coup, right? There's been a confession of a coup. There are analysts, John Mearsheimer has been great on this, who who have said that it's a coup. So the post-coup government, Nazis or otherwise, roll over into this area and start shelling Ukrainians and shelling Russians. And so this puts a problem. And the question that I always ask people, and I never get a really satisfying answer to, and some people have really tried to swing at it and have said some stuff that I've been like, oh yeah, okay, I see where you're coming from. But it doesn't solve the puzzle, which is what's Putin supposed to do? Right? He's got Nazis shelling Russians and Ukrainians in Donbass. He's got a government on his border that's trying to join a defensive alliance that is aligned against him. The Russians have said over and over and over again that this is an existential threat. One of the most critical documents that has come out of this period of time comes from the current head director of the CIA. And when he was the Russian ambassador, he wrote in 2009 that what we are doing in Ukraine is going to lead to a war with Russia. And it's going to lead to a war with Russia because it's putting Putin in a situation where he has no other alternative. And so the question genuinely is, what's Putin supposed to have done? Because the options are to allow this government, this post-coup government who wants to join NATO, to continue bombing Russians and Ukrainians in the Donbass region, or to, so that's option one. Option two, you're looking at it. My position on this conflict is that Putin didn't have a choice. That to choose otherwise would have made him one of the worst world leaders in the history of humankind. Without a doubt. We're talking about a betrayal on a degree that would be unheard of. And Putin has, and there's a ton of internal force within his own country propelling him forward on this war. Like the rally that he held where tens of thousands of people showed up at least. And I mean, we've got reports where it says about 200,000 people showed up, right? Those aren't paid actors. Like there's a good deal of support for this war, even though polling suggests that military personnel are not, like nobody wanted to do this, that they see it as necessary. They don't see it as something that they're happy to do, right? Like the Russian soldiers are not doing this pleasantly, right? There isn't this sense of like glory and all of this kind of stuff, right? Which manifests itself in their iconography, right? It manifests itself like the Z, which is for victory, right? Because that's what they want. They want victory. And for them, and this is where it gets really interesting, because for them, like Westerners don't understand this, right? That Russia actually has goals, right? Like we don't understand that. Here in the West, like it's either full-scale occupation forever, like Iraq, right? Like when we left Afghanistan, that was considered a loss because there were no stated goals. We had no stated agenda. The destruction of Libya, right? Like there was no real stated goals. So it's just wanton destruction. And that's how we understand war to be. But most wars throughout history have actually had stated goals. And Putin does have stated goals. He's got three major goals. And there are other ones, ancillary ones off on the side. But the three main goals that Putin wants from this war is the independence of the Donbass region, which the Donbass people themselves would like, given that they've been getting attacked by Ukraine for 8 years now. Something like 14,000 people have died in that war that nobody talks about. The Donbass war is invisible. the acknowledgement that Crimea is now part of Russia, which the Crimean people want, right? Because they don't want to be part of this kind of government. Like, they don't want to be part of this. They would like to be secure. And then finally, a promise from the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian people that they will never join NATO, which is absolutely crucially important to the existential survivability of Russia. Russia is surrounded by NATO right now. Like, they're feeling very pressed in, and this territory being neutral, Ukraine just being neutral, is good for everyone. It really is. It's good for Russia. It's good for NATO. It's good for Europe if Ukraine is just neutral, right? And of course, Putin would like to see a more Belarusian style relationship where Lukashenko is pro-Russia, and in fact is so tightly tied in to Russia that when Russia moved troops in, they moved them in through Belarus, right? So there was a front that Belarus opened up to Russia. That's how tightly aligned those two forces are. Of course, Putin and Moscow would love to see a similar thing happen in Ukraine. But if you ask me what Putin wants from this is to creating an independent state right here is a huge win for him, and a huge win for Russia, because it cuts this front, and it makes it far more difficult to actually create any kind of frontal attack in through this area, which is the threat that he's trying to avoid. Like, Russia has been invaded a billion times through this corridor, just like over and over again, and when this happens, like when this military force is finally defeated, when they finally surrender, and they're out of ammo, they're out of gas, they can't fight anymore, so they're out of juice, right? And once that ends, and they surrender, then Russia can basically just enforce themselves and enforce their demands onto Ukraine and force them to accept it. And when Donbass goes independent and Crimea goes to Russia and Ukraine signs a document saying they'll never join NATO, like when that all happens, Russia will begin to withdraw, and the Americans will say that Russia lost. Like, that's what's going to happen. And I don't know if you're still here, Victini, but if you're, like, obviously this war is terrible. Like, obviously, war is terrible, right? But when you are discussing the subject of war, and when you're discussing the subject of violence generally, one of the most crucial and important pieces of information is, well, who started it? Right? Like, there's a difference. Like, if you walked up to two guys and they were fist fighting, and you were somehow the judge and arbiter of what should happen to these two guys, well, it's going to matter to you who started the fight. Because everybody respects the idea that you should defend yourself, right? And in this particular case, Putin didn't start the fight. He's ending the fight. He gets drawn into the fight because I think he's presented with a puzzle that has no other solution. No other acceptable solution. Yeah, I don't like the war, but Russia has a right to security on its borders. And for God's sake, some of the shit that's coming out of Zelensky's mouth, like Zelensky is saying that he wants to turn, he wants to take, he wants to follow policies of Israel, right? So what that tells me is that he wants to turn Donbass into the Gaza Strip, right? Like, if I'm living in Donbass as they're shelling me and as they're attacking me, and the leader of the nation that's attacking me is saying we want to follow Israel's line, like, well, what does that mean? for me, right? That means that I'm in the Gaza Strip. No, thank you. Yeah, how could a nation not feel uncomfortable when an international military alliance has embedded themselves around every border they can? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, dude. Anyway, always good to go back through that one. Hopefully you heard that, Victini. I don't. You probably had to bounce. You said earlier that you didn't have the time, but that's fine. The people still challenge me on this one, and they should. Like, they should. Like, it's completely fine to challenge me on this. But I really do think, like, this was an unwinnable position for Putin. Like, there was no path for him out of this. That he was presented with a puzzle that had no satisfactory solution. And it's the Kobayashi Maru, right? Like, you can't win. And that's what it is to be a leader, right? That's what it is to be a leader. If you're the leader of a country, there is such a thing as an unwinnable situation. There is such a thing as doing your best and still failing. And I feel like Russia, like if I were to look at this situation and remove from it all of the names, and if I were to shake up this geography, right? And if I were just to, like, create, like, a sci-fi narrative and, like, put it in a Star Trek universe on a Star Trekian style planet, and have, like, Jean-Luc Picard observing this situation with, like, instead of it being like Ukraine, it's like the Borgothi, and instead of the Russians, it's the Chinstoffel, right? And you just sort of described what occurred. I mean, the conclusion that I have to draw is I don't think Putin had a choice. Like, what was he supposed to do? Right? Like the actual solution to the puzzle is for the United States to have backed off. Like, if you want to talk about who's mainly responsible for this war, in my perspective, like, Putin gave lots of lead up to this. He was very, very assertive with what he was saying, right? I genuinely believed the Americans would never let him invade. Like, this is how easy it would have been for this war to have been prevented. And I said, actually, and people still throw the clip at me. They've clipped it, and they throw it my way every so often, and they laugh at me about it. Where I said, I think the direct quote was, if you believe that Russia is actually going to invade, you might be a little delusional. Because I believed, and this is my delusion in this whole process, because the solution from the American side of the equation was so easy and simple that they would have never allowed Russia to invade. And it would have been as easy as releasing a document or releasing a statement saying, we will never allow Ukraine to join NATO. Straight up, just we decline Ukraine's interest in NATO. Blanket statement. So already the number one concern for Russia addressed would have taken them one day, literally a sentence, right? And then they could have very easily just sat down at a table with Zelensky and the Russian negotiators and said, we are no longer going to fund the Ukrainian military, and we would like to negotiate a peace deal for the independence of Donbass. And I think that would have taken them about a week. But even the fact that they would have sat down and said it would have de-escalated the situation. And moreover, all of that would have cost the United States nothing at all. That what the United States has tried to do here is backfiring on them. And it's backfiring on them because they're very stupid. They don't know anything about Russia. They don't care to know anything about Russia. They don't know anything about Putin. They don't care to know anything about Putin. Right? And all they've effectively done is chased Putin into the hands of the Chinese. So it's a total backfire. Like, the only people who have won from this conflict are Raytheon and the like. Anyway, budget day in Canada coming up. You got it, Harry. Looking forward to dissemination of what I can only speculate is a lackluster. Bind you to me with promises, slap me in the face in the human race balance plan. Yeah, I think you got it there, Harry. Honestly, my assumption about the budget is that it's going to be politicking, but the way the Liberals do, right? That they're going to look at very specific groups and give them little crumbs, right? That's how the Liberals roll. And what they do is they give them little crumbs so that they can get, like, okay, this little crumb will secure this riding. This little crumb will secure this riding. And that's how the Liberals try to build a coalition in order to get a continuation of support for power. Because the narrative of the populace is, well, at least they're, doing something, right? So they'll up, like, old age pension benefits for seniors over the age of 75. So that, like, tightens up a certain, and that does something throughout quite a few ridings. Like that, and that's what the Liberals are going to do and deliver. Okay, guys. Went over time today because we got on a very important subject, and that was useful. That was useful for me to get that put together in my brain. Always good to go through that material again. All right, guys. Always remember, you are a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. The billionaire class is spending hundreds of billions of dollars to make sure that you never realize it. And you'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.